Yeah, we are, yeah. Very good morning to you. This is the Newsroom team. Kendall Mahamate, Abbas President, myself, Ibn Jensen. Nice to have you with us. Of course, on today, it's American Election Day, US Election Day. Yes, the Star-Spangled Banner will be heard all over the world today as the Americans head to the polls. Now, of course, our question of the day today is a very serious question as it deals with South Africa's relation with the biggest economy in the world. So how important is the US election for South Africa right now, Elvis? That's an important question, but we're also running a poll.
Very important question, and we'll look at that. But here is your poll. Should America dump Trump?
Yeah, we've run this. We thought we'd run this from yesterday. We've got more than 200 votes in already. We're asking you, should America dump Trump? And 52% say yes, 18% say no. I'm concerned about 30% that don't care.
30% of people say they don't care. It doesn't really matter to them whether or not we dump Trump or not, or whether the Americans dump him, rather.
Kendall, you have a view on this, I'm sure.
No, absolutely. I've got a view on this, and I think the poll should keep running for the next 4 hours.
Well, you know, thank you very much to Kendall Mahamati to that invaluable input as always. Now, we've got a packed show. First hour, we're going to look at the American election. We've got the American ambassador who's on his way into studio. We also have, well, other American views and some journalists coming to tell us what they think about the 8th of November and what the world will look like by the end of this world. Will it change? Never know. We will let you know as soon as those start to develop. Also, lots of contributions from Sherwin Bryce Pease and Sophie Mokoena. They're both in the US covering the elections. But first, let's have a look at some of the other news of the morning with Elvis.
It's D-Day and the United States vote later today, with millions expected to head to the polls in a historic presidential election that could elect its first woman or its first billionaire to the White House. President Jacob Zuma has arrived in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa to attend a high-level meeting on political and security crisis afflicting Libya. And TUT Soshanguve campus has suspended face-to-face classes following disruptions, while fees must fall leader Mkhebo Dlamini applies for bail. Now, those are all your headlines. So before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Mahamate what's happening on the sports front. Very good morning, Kendall.
Elvis, thanks very much. Good morning. Good morning to the both of you. But even as this massive day and the milestone of American democracy is reached, there's quite a lot happening in the world of sports, and we're celebrating our own heroes this side of the world. And good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Obviously, there's a lot of credit that goes to this man over here. He's put up his hand and he's bowled really well.
Protes captain Faf du Plessis gushes over his star bowler Kagiso Rabada as the accolades for their feat in Perth keep pouring in.
What's huge for us in this campaign is to make sure our home form is really good, really strong.
And Bafana in camp ahead of their World Cup qualifier against Senegal, and they're keen not to repeat the mistakes of their AFCON qualifying campaign. And in an ongoing sponsorship legal battle, the commercial arm of Western Province Rugby is set to be liquidated. I will bring you all this in more detail about 10:40 or so. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. It is a big day for America. America will vote today. They must decide between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. One candidate will win to become the next US president. The US must choose between her vision of unity and his promise to take back power from Washington's corrupt elite, as he calls it. Now, Clinton made stops in 3 battleground states and deployed President Barack Obama as the cheerleader-in-chief in another before they would join up at a star-studded grand finale in Philadelphia. Trump sneered at Clinton's choice of pop stars to attract the crowds and stuck to his speech, each new version slightly more aggressive than the last. Trump's vow to rip up America's free trade deals, build a wall on the Mexican border, and renegotiate U.S. treaty alliances has spooked world markets seeking stability after the recent global slowdown. Some 40 million Americans have already cast their ballots in states that allow early voting, and tens of millions more will turn out later today for what is shaping up to be an historic clash. Clinton, the 69-year-old former First Lady, Senator and Secretary of State, has held a narrow but consistent lead in the opinion polls as she strives to become America's first woman president. But the campaign has been bruising. She has been haunted by allegations that she put the U.S. secrets at risk on her private email server while at the State Department, and support for Trump dropped after footage emerged of him bragging about sexual assault, and at least a dozen women came forward to accuse him. Now, despite this, polls have tightened as the big day is here.
Free kisses for Hillary. Get your free kisses for Hillary here.
I find Trump terrifying. I think there's something mentally wrong with him. It's all about him. He's like a 15-year-old kid who is just so full of his ego. And if he becomes president, we'll never get him out of the office.
It's time to drain the swamp. You know what that means? It means that the corruption in this country has been shown to everyone, and this is our chance with our votes to end it.
We are saying that we do not want Donald Trump to be president of the United States, that he would be a disaster. And we think Hillary is the only one to be elected president of the United States. She has the qualifications and the talent to be president. He cannot possibly do the job.
Black models support Donald Trump all day, every day. I support them because for many years this country, and especially minorities, have trusted and put this country in the trust of politicians. Donald Trump is not a politician, and I know that we can trust him.
No Trump! Dump Trump! No Trump!
These voters will decide who will be the next commander-in-chief of the United States of America. Sophie Mkwena, SABC News, New York.
Meanwhile, markets are betting on Hillary Clinton, with surveys suggesting that she's in the lead. Business anchor Nompu Sasiba spoke to Chris Gilmore, an investment analyst at Absa Wealth, and what the outcome of these elections will mean for South Africa and the continent.
With Brexit and with the UK general election back in 2015, on both occasions the pollsters got it very, very wrong. There are a couple of interesting little nuances with the US way of doing things. It's not just a case of getting the percentages. You have to get what's called electoral college votes. And to win, you have to get 270 electoral college votes. It's rather complicated and beyond the ambit of this discussion, but from what I can gather, Hillary Clinton looks like she's probably going to get about 290. So I think that's coming back to your point. That's why I think most observers are relatively confident that she's going to get it. However, having said all of that, there are two aspects that could disrupt things. One, a lot of the so-called battleground states, and I'm talking about states like Iowa, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and a few others, are quite close. And because it's a winner-takes-all type of thing for the Electoral College, if you can get Trump, for example, getting a couple more votes or a few more votes than there is currently being forecast, it could swing in his direction, and he could get that magic figure of 270. The other aspect to look at is there are a lot of undecideds out there, and maybe it's just possible you could see a rerun of what happened in the UK general election 2015, where a lot of people who were canvassed by the pollsters were very, very shy to admit that they were voting Conservative, because it's kind of stigmatic in the UK. And I think even more so, far more acute, I don't think people actually want to be seen to be aligned with Trump, other than his diehard supporters in the US. So therefore, maybe you'll see some of these people crawling out of the woodwork, for want of a better expression, and coming and voting on voting day, i.e. tomorrow. That could swing it as well. But interestingly enough, there's a crowd called Zero Hedge, and they've put out a thing saying there's an 86% chance, according to the market movements this year, that Trump will get it. And if you go back and look in history, back to 1928, when you've had markets like we've had, looking very, very sideways to down, it tends to favor the challenger rather than the incumbent's party. And on an 86% chance, going back all those years. So, it's on a knife edge, and it's really, really too close to call. But I would say, and you mentioned the Brexit thing, you mentioned the 2015 election, maybe I mentioned it, and with that in mind, I wouldn't care to put money on this one. It's too close to call.
Okay. Since we're speculating about what the outcome will be, let's look at the scenarios of either a Clinton presidency or a Trump one in terms of trade for South Africa and more broadly the continent. How do you think things will stay pretty much unchanged if Clinton were to take over?
Yeah, I think under a Hillary Clinton presidency, you will see pretty much business as usual. The Democrats, she's a member of the party, have had a long and close association with the African continent, far closer than the Republicans. So I think one can draw a lot of comfort from that. Trump, on the other hand, has expressed some fairly negative sentiments about Africa generally, about South Africa specifically. So I think it's fairly sure that you can bet that the Republicans and with him wouldn't really have an awful lot to do. So things like AGOA, for example, you've got a lot of signatories to that contract. Would that necessarily be as good as it currently is, in inverted commas, under a Trump presidency? I think a Clinton presidency, as I say, would be very much business as usual, and maybe even the possibility of enhancing it a bit. But I suppose with Africa generally having slid back into the shadows because of its relatively low growth trajectory forecast now because oil is so low, then I think it's not so much on the radar screen as it would have been a couple of years ago.
Well, that's Chris Gilmore from ABSA. He's telling us about what the impact will be for South Africa in terms of the US elections. But we're asking you this morning. There's a question we posed to you. It's on your screen right now. We're asking you, why should we care, South Africans, and how important is the US elections for you and me here back home? You can let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page, and we'll read your comments as we continue. There's also a poll that we got up there. Let's see if we can get the poll up there. And we have a guest that we're going to speak to in a short while, investigative journalist from the U.S., Jeff Kelly Lowenstein, is here in studio with us. Jeff, you'll be talking to us about the U.S. elections. So give us a little bit of breakdown about the elections and so forth, and we'll take a look at that. And let's see if we have the poll up there that we're asking you, should America dump Trump? That's the question we're asking. 65 and 52% of you are saying yes, we the Americans should dump Trump. 18% says no, and 30% of you says, well, we don't care. 209 votes so far, 4 hours left. We'll continue with that. Let's now take a look at all other social trends with Eben before we start the conversation.
Yeah, it was an interesting one. You know, we said, how does this kind of thing, how does this election affect us? Immediately this morning, in anticipation of the election, the rand has already shot up. So it kind of shows you that we live in a global village now, and all these kind of murmurs around the world, they reverberate in our very own country. So we have to
and it does matter to a great deal.
Absolutely, yeah. It certainly does. Interesting. They simplified it as crooked Hillary against dodgy Donald. That's what it's become right now. We're going to look at the next hour. Yeah, that's what they call them. Actually, they've coined the phrases themselves. Donald has gone crooked Hillary and dodgy Donald on the other side. That's how they've built this heavyweight contest that's going down in the US over the next couple of days. Of course, Donald, with his own special style of bigotry that he's shared with the world over the last year or so, and Hillary, who herself has a lot to answer for in the run-up to this election. But it's been simplified a little bit to the lesser of two evils. It's not as simple as that. There's a whole lot of discussion we need to have, and we will have over the next hour with regards to the US election. Let's just have a quick look now what's on social media. We'll start with the hashtag Election 2016, of course. That's the one where you can interact with. Lots of hype around who the next president will be. They call him the eccentric businessman Donald Trump, to possibly the first ever female US president, Hillary Clinton. Now, Americans certainly have a difficult choice this time around. Of course, there are always key states to watch. You can see voting. Well, voting has begun, but the polls open in less than 3 hours' time, and people are out in their numbers, we can tell you. Other hashtags that you can follow on the score, hashtag Hillary, hashtag the US capitals, and then the hashtag Dear Americans. Now, this tweet comes from Miklos, who says, Dear Americans, please do not screw this up. Love every non-American on earth. Yes, gone are the days of God bless America and no one else. Then, here in South Africa, of course, we have our own problems. Right now, the weather is giving us a little bit of upheaval. We've seen what's storms down in KwaZulu-Natal. Here in Yeah, we passed that one. Yeah, we're looking at other hashtags in South Africa. The Silver Lakes flood in Pretoria. Yeah, we've had torrential downpours, yeah. And yes, the country needs it. So, Silver Lakes flood, if you want to look at some pictures of the devastation in and around the capital, here's an image from a bridge, well, a bridge cam that shows the Yukskay River flowing rapidly right now. That is pictures from this morning. Of course, early voting data in critical U.S. states suggest a surge in turnout amongst Latino and African American voters in a move that could provide a major boost to Hillary Clinton's campaign. We'll talk about that, but let's first take a look at what you are saying with regards to this. Now, Shoaib Hashmi says a lot of people in election 2016 will vote against Trump, not for Hillary. Interesting observation. Zakar says 50% of Germans are scared that if Trump wins, World War III is about to start in their front yard. Yeah, everybody says that. This one from Brigham. Is it Brigham? Brigham Young. He says, we get to witness the first female to be elected president tomorrow. Exciting times. Yes, Reuters and Ipsos have put it at a 90% chance that Hillary will win. Rachel says, thinking about this election makes me think of how great we all had it when Obama was still in office. Yes, we will look back at that, Rachel, in years to come. Kimberly Corbin says, if Hillary Clinton wins, history will be made for all the wrong reasons. Tomorrow, I'll vote with my mind, not my ovaries. And what does your mind say, Kimberly? Interesting. All these women who are there for Trump, women for Trump. Incredible. Anyhow, let's take a look at our picture of the day. Now, this one comes from Cameron Davis, and it's captioned, when your neighborhood, and this is a picture coming out of the Silver Lakes flood. Pictures, actually, Silver Lakes turns into brown torrents. Hashtag Silver Lakes floods. Yes, we're getting the rain. We're getting some downpours here around South Africa. Of course, a man that's been in the crosshairs of the media the last couple of days is our very own Minister Razmataz Mbalula Figile. Of course, money. Now, he's tweeted and he says, and that is why Kagiso is nominated in the Sports Star of the Year award and also in the People's Choice category. He's exceptional, no doubt about that. Go and vote for Kagiso Rabada as our Sports Star of the Year. He'll have tough competition, though. This might just be the year of Wade van Niekerk. But you go and vote for who you think should be South Africa's Sports Star of the Year. Now, let's take a quick look at what's happening in the courts here in South Africa. In Johannesburg, where, of course, hashtag Fees Must Fall leader and former Wits University SRC president Ngebo Dlamini is expected to apply for bail in the High Court sitting at Palm Ridge. The arrest came after a month of violent protests that have plagued the university. Then, down in Port Elizabeth, the alleged middleman in the Panayota murder trial, Lutando Sioni, is expected to take the stand in the High Court there today. Sioni was working as a bouncer in a nightclub owned by the PE businessman Christopher Panayota. Of course, he's alleged to have hired men to abduct and kill Panayota's wife, Jade. Now, Panayota, Sinatemba, Nenembe, and Zolani Sibeko are accused of conspiring to murder Jade in April of last year. Now, the alleged triggerman, Sizwe Zake Vumazonke, he died in hospital just over 2 months ago. Then, in Bellville, in the Commercial Crimes Court, 3 days have been set aside this week for the trial of 8 Cape Town police officers who are facing charges of fraud. The 6 male and 2 female officers face 16 charges of fraud and corruption. They allegedly falsified travel claims. They were based at the Khayelitsha police station and were part of a specialized unit. Interesting cases before the courts. We'll keep you updated, but today we're looking at the US elections, and after the break, we'll ask this question on screen. How important is the US election for South Africa? But we'll also look at other issues. The rise of Donald Trump, for instance. What does it mean? What does a Hillary Clinton presidency mean for the world? These are questions we'll ask after the break, so don't go away. Welcome back. You're back with us here on the Newsroom show. Elvis and Jeff are sitting by. Jeff, I wanted to ask you, we've been running a poll. Should America dump Trump? Have a look at the numbers. Are you surprised by what's coming out of the kind of sentiment that we have here in South Africa around the American election?
I'm not really that surprised, Yebony. I know that there's been a lot of concern here in South Africa and also throughout the world of what a Trump presidency might mean from a foreign policy perspective. So the high percentage of yes saying dump Trump makes sense, and then the I don't care, I think a lot of people are sort of disengaged, so I think that's the second answer. Disengaged out of a certain fair element. We'll continue with that discussion, but let's first have a look. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump, he's alleged that large-scale voter fraud is occurring in the U.S. Now, the Trump campaign has made claims of election rigging for months now, blaming the dishonest and distorted media and the Clinton machine for the Republican slide in battleground states in the polls. Because of the accusations, the New York City Board of Elections has introduced its anti-fraud voting system. Let's have a look.
Their marked ballot. They could put it in any orientation.
Donald Trump's repeatedly talked of vote rigging in Tuesday's polls, although he's provided scant evidence to back it up. In the wake of his allegations, New York City's Board of Elections has been showing its electronic system designed to wipe out mistakes and fraud by voters. The system was designed after the 2000 general election, ultimately decided by the Supreme Court after a contested recount over the hanging Chad from manually punched cards.
Not just the Board of Elections, every level of government, from the highest level on down, has been engaged in a large-scale cooperative effort to make sure that anyone who's planning any mischief will be thwarted immediately.
Trump's call for his supporters to go to polling stations as unofficial monitors in some battleground states has been controversial. Many voters in Democrat-leaning Pennsylvania, one of those battleground states, say they oppose such a scheme.
For someone to watch me make sure I don't do something that I shouldn't be doing and that I have done years and years over, I think it's a little overkill.
We ain't no Trump supporters around here because, number one, the man is crazy, you know, with a capital K, and then 2 more Ks, and he know what I'm talking about.
Clinton has the edge among women and minorities. Trump enjoys solid support among non-college educated whites. For both, the critical task is turning that support into actual votes.
Now, the United States goes to the polls today on the 8th of November. It's a big day. This marks the culmination of robust and expensive campaigns by the presidential hopefuls, Democrat Hillary Clinton and Republican Donald Trump. You heard the names, they call each other. But today, we focus on the U.S. elections that could have significant historic implications for U.S. politics and a lot more for the world. Jeff Kelly Lowenstein is an award-winning database and investigative editor at Hoy, the Chicago Tribune's Spanish-language newspaper, and is also immediate past president of the Ochberg Society, an international organization of journalists who cover issues of trauma and violence. He's also a Fulbright scholar at the University of Diego Portales. A very good morning to you, Jeff, and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for coming. First and foremost, tell us why you're here in South Africa. What are you doing at this exciting time in U.S. elections?
Well, it does feel a little strange to be away from home, that's true, but I'm here for the African Investigative Journalism Conference that WITS is hosting. It's the 11th year they've had it, hundreds of journalists from all over the continent. And next year, WITS will host the Global Investigative Journalism Conference.
And that's the big one, right?
Big one, first time ever in Africa. So I helped a little bit with the programming, doing some moderating and some presenting. So very excited to be here.
Now, let's take a look at the elections. The American electoral system is very strange for us here in South Africa because it works differently, right?
Yes.
Take us through that system and how it actually operates.
Sure. Here in South Africa, as you folks know, you tend to vote more for a party. And then at the national level, the delegates are allocated proportional to the vote. In the United States, people tend to vote much more for the individual. So the conversation that you've been having about Trump and Clinton really makes sense. And then also, it's what's called the Electoral College. And so whoever wins an individual state gets all of the electoral votes associated with that state. So in order to win the whole election, a candidate has to get 270 electoral votes. The votes that each state has is dependent on the population of the state. So a state like California, even if you win by just 1 vote, you get almost 20% of the electoral votes necessary to win. So this leads to a number of differences in the electoral system and how it plays out.
The electoral college system, why is that so important for the states specifically?
Well, what it means, Elvis, is that, and I think the map that Yebony had up earlier showed that the elections tend to come down to a few battleground states. So in other words, probably 40 states in the country out of 50, they're very strongly either red on the Republican side or blue on the Democratic side. So the candidates don't pay that much attention to those states. Instead, they focus on states like Florida, like North Carolina, like Wisconsin, so that they can win those states and get over the 270 threshold to become president.
Now, the former First Lady, Hillary Clinton, is now 5 points ahead, and according to the ABC News, Washington Post, 48% to 43% ahead. But this is very, very close. There's other polls that suggest that they're even closer than that, even neck or neck. Is this too close to call, you think?
Well, I think that the polls tend to favor Hillary Clinton, but until the votes are counted, you really can't say who's actually going to win. And I think that there certainly are polls that show Trump in the lead and Clinton's lead tends to be within the margin of error. So on the whole, she does seem to be leading, but it's pretty close.
If Donald Trump wins, what implications will that have for America and for the world?
Well, I think the implications would be massive. Mr. Trump has never held elected office before. He, as the intro was talking about, he's raised some very profound questions about the legitimacy of the democracy. And he's run on a very conservative platform, both on domestic issues, but also from a foreign policy perspective. So it would be a very big departure from the 8 years that have happened under President Obama.
Eben, you want to join in the conversation there?
Yeah, I want to talk about kind of where Donald Trump fits into the world a little bit. And I wanted to ask you, we see the rise of right-wing sentiment around the world, if one can call it that. You see the rise of that kind of sentiment with Brexit, Britain leaving the European Union. We've seen the rise of right-wing politics all over continental Europe. And now we're starting to see the rise of right-wing politics, very conservative right-wing politics in America. This rise of the right, should we in the free world, as you would call it, should we be concerned about the rise of that right-wing element within global politics?
Well, it's a really important question, Yebony, and it does seem like there is a growth in folks who are pretty far on the right wing. In the United States, that's been there for a while, but it has gained strength in recent years. I think the part to be concerned about is not so much policy differences. I think people can honestly disagree about that. But associated with that strong right-wing position has been a very strong anti-immigrant perspective and kind of an exclusionary, almost xenophobic type of attitude. And I think that is something for people of all good faiths to be concerned about.
Now, we've seen also that, as we indicated, very close call right now, but let's talk about the implications Hillary Clinton becomes the very first lady, because it's going to be a first for America in any case. First president in the White House as a female.
That's right. That would definitely be an historic aspect about that. From a policy perspective, she's campaigned on trying to continue and then advance some of the policies that President Obama has proposed and then tried to move forward during his presidency. Certainly, she's quite a controversial person, and so there's some concern that if she gets in, there would be years of investigations and how much would be able to get done. But either way, if she wins, it's definitely an historic moment in American and world history.
Talking about history, let's go to Yeben just to take a look at the elections and some of the comments coming through.
Yeah, let's just have a quick look. We've got the American ambassador, actually, Mr. Patrick Gaspard, joining us live from our studios in the capital here in Pretoria, in South Africa. Mr. Gaspard, thank you very much for joining us today. Nice to have you with us. I see you wearing a beautiful red tie today. Is that a statement of intent?
Of course it is. It's a red, white, and blue day. There's nothing that I like more than elections in my country, and I wanted to celebrate it. And thank you for having me on your show on this historic day.
Now, you're the ambassador here in South Africa. You're the perfect man to tell us how important, we're asking this question to our viewers, how important is this election, not just to South Africa, but Southern Africa and in the wide African continent? How important is this election for us, and what do you think should we be on the lookout for?
Well, we all know that elections in the U.S. Always have implications for our friends and allies overseas, given the strength, the size of the U.S. economy, and the critical role that we play on regional peace and security issues and on global trade. So clearly it's important, particularly at a time when Americans are investing more in trade and development in Africa than we ever have before in our history. So it's of consequence. But let me just quickly add that irrespective of whoever wins the election tonight, our policies in sub-Saharan Africa will continue. I've spent a fair amount of time talking to Democrats and Republicans in our Congress and in our Senate, and all of them affirm the partnership, the engagement, the support that we have here on healthcare, education, and on economic development, and that will all continue.
So all the promises that Barack Obama came to make here when he visited us a couple of years ago regarding cooperation and the like, the African continent shouldn't be concerned that Donald Trump will come in and smash it all and say, let's start again.
You know, we have increased our development and trade resources here considerably over the last 8 years. And Republican senators like Jeff Flake from Arizona and Democratic senators like Chris Coons from Delaware have all come to South Africa. They've looked your leadership and your citizens in the eyes, and they've said they're going to continue with those programs. That's not to suggest that there aren't significant differences in domestic and foreign policy between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. But we are a country that's governed by the strength of its institutions, the strength of our Constitution, and our enduring partnerships across the world.
Mr. Ambassador, I wanted to ask you about the image of America abroad. Now, we all know what Donald Trump has been preaching over the last year or so to the wider world, much to the concern of South Africans and people on the African continent, the views on minorities and women and the like. How do you think the world views America now in light of Donald Trump?
You know, I've been blessed and privileged to spend my career in the United States working on in government and in campaigns and elections. I was blessed to have worked on President Obama's last 2 successful campaigns. And I always caution my friends in the media not to just look at our country in a snapshot moment, but to look at it over time. Overseas, there's still a sense that America continues to be the place to look towards if one is concerned about issues of inclusion and justice and equality. We have our profound challenges in the United States that we struggle to overcome every day, but we're open and transparent about those challenges and try to do all that we can to work towards perfecting our union. When I talk to my friends here in South Africa, there is concern about some of the xenophobia, some of the misogyny, some of the issues around discrimination based on religion that we've heard in this contest. The rhetoric has been quite heated indeed, but I always remind my friends that at the end of the day, because of the values in our constitutions, the value in our heart, we're going to continue to protect and defend all of those interests.
Ambassador, it's Elvis Preston here, also from the Newsroom. Now, we've heard that more than 40 million Americans has already voted early, surpassing the 32 million that who casted their votes in the last elections 4 years ago. Does this suggest there's a lot more interest, basically, in this particular elections, and there's a lot more at stake here?
You know, there is a tremendous amount at stake, and we're seeing a passionate interest. If you look at the rally sizes for both of the candidates, if you look at the early vote turnout in places like Florida, Nevada, North Carolina, clearly there's something that's percolating on the ground. And we know that by the end of the day, over 120 million Americans will have expressed their preference for the presidency. So there's huge interest, big surge numbers. And that will have consequences not only for who wins the presidency, but who wins down ballot in the U.S. Senate and the Congress. We have to remember that in America, there are checks and balances on the presidency, so the outcome in the other legislative races are critical.
Now, Mr. Ambassador, I'm Jeff Kelly Lowenstein, visiting from Grand Valley State. Nice to meet you, sir.
You know, Jeff, it's great to hear that. It's great to hear that American accent on SABC.
Thank you. So my question is, I really appreciate what you were saying about some of the concern around some of the rhetoric that Mr. Trump has made during the campaign. What are you hearing from folks about his statements around the election being rigged, about his statement during the third debate? I'll let you know if I'll accept the results, and subsequently saying it won't be rigged if I win, but it will be if I don't. What sort of message, because that was quite a chilling, really, reminder about how strong our institutions have been, but this was really saying one of the two major candidates was really questioning the legitimacy of that 240-year tradition. What are you hearing about that?
You know, Jeff, I'm so glad that you asked that question. There's been a lot of concern and anxiety around statements being made about our election process being rigged and whether or not it's possible to cheat the system, particularly in this region where the United States has a long history of supporting democratic governance and helping to assure free and fair elections throughout sub-Saharan Africa, throughout the world. So it's a question that comes up frequently, and some of my friends worried that there's going to be an increased cynicism about our systems on the back end. But I can assure the viewers on SABC that our election system is absolutely strong. Nothing is foolproof anywhere, but because our elections are decentralized and all 50 states actually govern their own voting process, their own tabulation, it's very, very, very difficult, next to near impossible, to rig the system. Our system is absolutely strong, and one can be confident that when the votes are tallied this evening at the national level and at the state level as well, that there will be transparency, and the ultimate winner will indeed be the person who received the most votes.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much. I'm going to ask you to hang around a little bit. We're just going to take a little break. But before we take a break, I want to take some of our comments of our viewers and some of the question that you, our viewers, are asking with regard to the U.S. election. Of course, Jeff Kelly Lewenstein is with us in studio. If you've got any questions for him, send it in right now. We ask of you, how important is the U.S. elections for South Africa? We're also running a poll that says, should America dump Trump? And right now, well, 50% of you say, yeah, get rid of him. Anyhow, let's take a look at some of the comments coming in. As you can imagine, the world of celebrity is right on top all over this election. Lady Gaga, Beyonce, Madonna, they've all rallied behind Hillary Clinton as the U.S., they're preparing to elect a new president today. The polling booth will open at 1 p.m. That's in about just over 3 hours' time on Tuesday today. Now, A-list star power is part of the massive get out to the vote operation that's taking place in the U.S. Yeah, some of those comments that are coming in. This one from Lady Gaga. Hillary, we love you because we know that you know we are stronger together. I'm with her. The hashtags that she's putting forward. Vote for Hillary, she says. There's a picture of Hillary Clinton. She tweeted herself, in America, we build bridges, not walls. Let's go out and prove that love trumps hate. Strong stuff there from Hillary Clinton as she goes to the polls today. The Donald says, today we're going to win the great state of Michigan and we're going to win back the White House. Thank you, he says to Michigan there, M.I. Of course, let's hope that Donald accepts this, that he accepts this defeat. Right now, the Ipsos poll stands at 90% chance for Hillary to win it. I don't know if it's that much of a landslide. I can tell you it's always going to be a lot closer than you think. Don't forget what happened with George W. Bush in Florida a couple of years ago. Anyhow, let's take a quick look at the front pages from around the globe as we go into the U.S. elections now. In Europe, the Times reports that a surge in women and Hispanic early voters has left Donald Trump facing an uphill struggle even before polling stations open today, as the most unpredictable U.S. election in memory reaches its climax. Then, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post says, campaigning for over 600 days and spending over $6 billion US, Hillary Rodham Clinton and Donald J. Trump have nothing left to do but wait, as Americans finally head to the polls to choose which among them will be the next commander-in-chief. Finally, in Iran, yes, let's go there. The Tehran Times reports that Iran will today sign a deal with France as total for the development of gas production at the South Paris field in the Persian Gulf. That's according to the Iranian Oil Ministry, and it can tell us where their priorities are on voting day today in the US. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion around what has become the showdown between crooked Hillary and dodgy Donald. Don't go away.
Macro is lending a helping hand with big festive season savings that'll move you. Like the Totem 16-inch or 20-inch Mojo bikes for only $10.99. Save 200 Rand. Or save 200 Rand on the Bounce King 10-foot trampoline, now only $24.99. And zip away on a Zingo X100 electric scooter for $1,999. Save 300 Rand. Share in these and other big festive savings for home, for business, for life. Only at Macro. Big on life.
Yeah, welcome back. We're dealing with the American election today, U.S. election 2016. It's Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton. We've got the U.S. ambassador to South Africa, Mr. Gaspard, is with us in our capital studio in Pretoria. Nelson Mandela behind him there in the picture. Welcome back. Nice to have you with us. I know you have to go in a couple of minutes, Mr. Ambassador, but just quickly, can you outline for us a little bit what the world would look like under Hillary Clinton and under Donald Trump? In your opinion?
You know, actually, I actually won't do that because not only am I in a nonpartisan role here, but I think it's very, very difficult to make that kind of forecast. What I will say is that both candidates in the course of this election have asked very important questions about the nature of our trade relationships with other countries and whether or not average Americans are benefiting from that trade. And what we all need to do together to grow our infrastructure and our manufacturing base. That has real implications for allies overseas, and we're going to have to work through those consequences. But if I could, with your permission, I want to quickly go back to the question that Jeff asked me about the integrity of our voting systems. I was a little timid in responding to Jeff's question. It's actually unprecedented that a major party candidate in America would question those systems and that processes. And the last thing that we need is to have any increased cynicism about our government, about our campaigns and our elections. As you all have proven recently in South Africa, institutions matter, and we need to do all that we can to enhance the scaffolding of those institutions. It was outrageous for a major party candidate to continue to question the integrity of our system, and I know that most Americans have faith in our openness, our transparency, and our ability to come together after elections to continue to assure the strength of our democracies. So thank you for having me on.
Before you go, Mr. Ambassador, I want to ask you one last thing. I want to talk about this campaign and what we've seen as the rise of dirty politics, if you can call it that. The kind of rhetoric that's come out of this election hasn't always been positive. There's been a lot of name calling and a lot of underhandedness, if you can call it that.
It's interesting to me. I've worked on many campaigns and elections, and every couple of years we talk about the rise of negative campaigning and how intense things are. Things were pretty bad when Thomas Jefferson ran for president as well against Adams. So let's just be clear that the rhetoric is always intense, always heated. There's always polarization. I think that some of that has been worsened by social media, and there's a coarseness in our politics across the globe now. That's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, most people approach the ballot box with real aspiration. They're trying to improve the lives of their children and their children's children. They're worried about the environment and education and health care. And let's remember that that's the majority. That's not the exception, and we should pay more attention to those voices and those hearts and ambitions.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you for coming in and being so frank with us. Yes, it is election day, and those polls will be well apart today. Thank you for joining us. That's Patrick Gaspard. He's the current U.S. ambassador to South Africa, and he says we shouldn't be too worried about what's coming out of this election. That's part of the campaign. It's a dirty game. Jeff, just before Elvis introduces something, do you agree with that kind of sentiment, or has it been especially nasty this time around?
Well, I think it has been particularly nasty, this campaign, Yebin. And to me, what the difference between, say, 2008, President Obama's first campaign, is that both candidates really focused very highly, Clinton and Trump, on waging a very negative, personal set of attacks. And a lot of rallies that Mr. Trump had, people would be chanting, lock her up, lock her up. Similar kind of very negative things. Yeah. President Obama had an incident in North Carolina the other day. So I do think the ambassador's right that there is a history of really contentious politics, but this has been different than what has happened before.
Is this the new normal then?
Well, I do think that the role of social media is significant, like he was talking about. I also think that it's important to say that Mr. Trump comes out of a context, and the context is that there's been a lot of different elements within the conservative side of politics which have promoted these ideas, and Mr. Trump has put them out there a bit more directly and forthrightly. Yeah. The other thing that I would just say real quickly about Mr. Trump is that it is important to acknowledge that his ability to articulate the anger and frustration that many people feel, that's contributed. His ability to use social media also contributed in the primaries to his victory.
Now, a lot of talk has been about the minority groupings, the Hispanics and the Black Americans, as well as the Native Americans. How important is that vote for either candidate?
It's an excellent question, Elvis, and I think particularly the Latino vote so far seems to be stronger and higher than it's been in previous elections. And Latinos have been one of the fastest growing groups in the country, but their voting hasn't matched their growth. So their power, their electoral muscle hasn't been flexed. Because of the comments that Mr. Trump has made about the wall, about immigrants, they seem to be coming out in bigger numbers. African Americans, there's been a lot of reports of voter suppression, people going off the rolls in North Carolina. That's been a big concern. And there's been less enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton as compared to Barack Obama. So the African American vote, which has always been one of the strongest Democratic votes, it's not clear how strongly they'll back, in terms of numbers, Secretary Clinton.
Is there perhaps a leaning towards one of the candidates in terms of the Hispanic vote, you think?
Oh, yes. No, it's very strong towards Secretary Clinton. In 2004, President Bush got close to 50% of the Latino vote, and that really helped him get over the hump with John Kerry. But President Obama had much higher numbers, and you're very hard-pressed to find Latinos who really will come out in favor of Trump. And
just in closing then, Jeff, if we look at the American election today, will this election divide Americans as a whole? Because there's a lot of rhetoric, as you mentioned.
I hope not. And I hope that what the ambassador said, that 120 million people casting their vote, will help people come together, that whoever wins, the other person will accept the result. America is very divided, and that it is important to recognize that those differences won't necessarily go away because of an election. But hopefully, the belief in what our country can be will help bring people together.
Jeff, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, was Mr. Jeff Kelly-Lowenstein. He is an award-winning database as well as investigative editor at The Hoy. It's a Chicago Tribune Spanish-language newspaper. He's also a Fulbright scholar at the University of Diego. And he's here for a very big conference. We'll talk more about that. It's now over to Ibn.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff. Nice to chat to you. Really enjoyed it today. And enjoy the rest of your stay here in South Africa. And let's hope the best person wins. But I can tell you, national polls right now have the Democratic Party's Hillary Clinton maintaining a 3 to 6 point advantage over Republican nominee Donald Trump, while the candidates and their surrogates have spent the last couple of weeks of this campaign barnstorming the all-important swing or battleground states that will determine the outcome of today's poll.
After 18 months of crisscrossing this country, candidates and those who speak for them are finally making their closing arguments to the electorate. A stark choice between a brash anti-establishment billionaire who has confounded political scientists with his success despite everything he says and does, and a career politician not without scandal, who could become the first woman in history to ever be called U.S. Commander-in-Chief. And if a state is called swing, then it's probably seen both Trump and Clinton in recent months as they vie for the Electoral College votes required to push them over the top.
I believe America's best days are still ahead of us. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have to work for it, because we do. That doesn't mean that we can just expect it to happen as kind of a birthright. But I really believe that. I would not have worked for 18 months, traveled across our country, thought as hard as I have about what we need to do and how to do it together, proudly stand up and defend the legacy of President Obama, which has given our country progress in the right direction. If I did not believe with all my heart that we could do this, right? We can do this.
With some giving Clinton a 90% chance of winning Tuesday, the Republican nominee faces an uphill path to the White House and needs to win more swing states than Clinton does, including the jewel in this year's presidential crown, Florida.
Real change also means restoring honesty to our government. Hillary Clinton is the most corrupt person ever to seek the office of the presidency of the United States. I'm asking you to dream big, because with your vote, we are just one day away from the change you've been waiting for your entire life. I think and hope it will be the most important vote you will ever cast, because we don't win anymore as a country. We don't win on the borders. We don't win with trade. What China is doing to us is beyond belief.
Early voting that ended Sunday has seen record numbers across the country, particularly among Latino voters in swing states like Florida and Nevada that could hurt Trump's prospects.
We are seeing really high levels of early voter turnout because people are projecting that there could be long lines, right? And so if you can vote on a weekend, then that actually helps. And so I think some of the rhetoric of the Republican candidate has motivated, especially people with immigrant families, to actually turn out. Because there are a lot of people who are genuinely afraid that if the Republican candidate wins, then even though they're citizens, that they or their loved ones could be deported and the country could go in a totally different direction.
Trump's assertion that he'll decide on election night whether or not to accept the results as the most dangerous thing he's said in this election.
About, say, 2000, and the significance of Al Gore accepting the results. For the good of the nation, I will acquiesce and let George Bush be president. That's it, right? It's incredible. It was razor thin. If we have someone before the results are even in saying, I don't know, we'll see. It's like, this is not season 12 of The Apprentice.
Security across the country will be on high alert through Election Day, including an extraordinary presence of New York's finest across the city, as the focus now shifts from persuasion to mobilization and getting supporters to the polls that could make the difference between this and this. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
Lovely work there from Sherwin Bryce-Pease. What? Make America great again. What does that even mean? We're asking you the question. How important is the U.S. election for South Africa? We've also been running a poll, but let's take a look at some of your tweets that you've been talking now directly to us. Motsamai Makalani says, Newsroom, very, very important to South Africa, given South Africa being the gateway into Africa. Yes, Motsamai, well said and well spotted there. Aremu says, we can't call Donald Trump a Republican with a Republican virtue, so he should discontinue the African investment. Really? SKS McBuy, he says, Trump is an avoidable apocalypse. Make the smart choice, America. Yes, make the smart choice, America. That is what's being said. That's where we wrap this hour, where we talk about the U.S. election. In the next hour, we're going to talk about slavery in South Africa's vineyards. Yes, remember? There was a big furore a couple of weeks ago with South Africa's wines, Robertson wine, that has been taken off the shelves in Denmark for alleged slavery in the vineyards. In the next hour, we will talk about that. But I've got Kendall Mahimati with me here now, and I want to talk about something that concerns me personally, because Western Province Rugby has just been liquidated now. Having supported the Western Province Rugby brand since I was a little boy running around on the farm in Stellenbosch, it's very concerning to me. But is it a concern, or is this a, let's call it, a corporate move in order to get out of a battle? Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, there are some people that say that the Western Province, Thilo Wakefield and David Zaks, CEO and President, have obtained this liquidation order to try and get away from the answers they need to give to areas for a sponsorship battle they've got with them for naming rights and moving to Cape Town and so on and so forth. However, considering the fact that this would be the third union that faces liquidation in recent times. Western Province border, and now, I mean, Eastern Province Kings, Eastern Kings border, and now Western Province. I think it's part of a bigger issue that we need to look at.
Yeah, it's a different story, though, when the oldest and biggest union in the country is liquidated, or
100%.
or liquidate themselves out of choice. Now, we understand how it's broken down. Of course, this is only the commercial arm of the rugby entity. Is this a fast one to get out of that?
It could well be. It could well be, considering as well that they still have the money to pay all the other contractual obligations to the players, for example, the TV rights deals and so on and so forth. And they say that the players will not get affected. Nothing will happen to the field of play. So, yeah, it could very well be just that, a way to just have business go on as usual and have areas be swept into the dustbin of history.
Thank you very much, Kendall Mahimati, for talking about that. As I told you a little bit earlier, we will be talking about slavery in the vineyards at the top of the next hour. Don't go away.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Did you know that Vilakazi Street is the only street in the world to have housed two Nobel Prize winners? Vilakazi Street in Orlando West, Soweto, southwest of Johannesburg in the Republic of South Africa, has been home to Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Nelson Mandela's house was a modest family house from 1946 and still maintains those features. Archbishop Desmond Tutu still owns his house in Vilakazi Street since 1975 and often goes to stay there when visiting Johannesburg. Because of its popularity, the street has an influx of tourists. Restaurants with local cuisine have mushroomed around it, creating job opportunities for the locals and improving the lifestyle in the area. Orlando West High School in Vilakazi Street is known for its creative role during the famous 1976 uprising.
Yeah, welcome back. Very good morning to you. It's US Election Day. Yes, it's the day that the world's been waiting for. I'm with Kendall Makamate. Kendall is on the sports desk. Coming to the picture. There we go. There's Kendall. Sure. Kendall is with me. We'll be with you for the next hour or so to keep you in the loop as to what is happening. Of course, Kendall, we're changing. Well, let's first look at the poll, because we're dealing with the US election. And we've been running this poll almost, what, for a day?
It's almost a day.
216 votes. We're asking of you, should America dump Trump? Simple question. 31% I don't care. People don't care.
You know what? It says 31% not caring. South Africans and other viewers from the rest of the continent saying they don't care. It means they don't understand the exposure that we and the rest of the world have got to what happens in the United States.
Just look at the rand, is what I say. Look at the rand. Whatever happens in the US normally reverberates into our economy and in our wider Southern African economy. Now, we're changing our question in this hour because we've got a totally different story that we're looking into. Now, we ask you, do you believe this story of slavery on South Africa's wine farms? Yes, slavery. That's what, well, a documentary maker, we'll speak to him shortly, talking about bitter grapes and slavery on South Africa's wine farms. Now,
something that's actually like, I think it's gonna affect a lot of people in terms of like the stuff that's going to come out of this this documentary, as well as what the conversations we're going to be having this morning.
Yeah, interesting conversation. We talk to all stakeholders around slavery in the vineyards here in South Africa. That's our question. Send us. Do you think we still have slavery in the vineyards here in South Africa? Do you believe the documentary? Well, we'll look into all of that. At SABC Newsroom is where you can send us your views with regards to that. But time now for us to look at the news headlines. The United States votes later today, with millions expected to head to the polls in a historic presidential election that could elect its first woman or billionaire to the White House. President Jacob Zuma has arrived in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, to attend a high-level meeting on political and security crises affecting Libya. And TUT's Shoshanguve campus has suspended face-to-face classes following disruptions, while fees must fall leader Ngabo Dlamini applies for bail. Well, those are your headlines right now, but let's go to Kendall and have a look at what's happening in the world of sport today.
El, you know what? We're still celebrating that amazing victory by the Protes out in Perth. You can't blame us. We were absolutely fantastic, Evan.
We love a winner in South Africa. That we do.
We absolutely love a winner. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today.
Obviously, there's a lot of credit that goes to this man over here. He's put up his hand and he's bowled really well.
Proteas captain Faf du Plessis gushes over his star bowler Kagiso Rabada as the accolades for their feat in Perth keep pouring in.
What's huge for us in this campaign is to make sure our home form is really good, really strong.
Bafana in camp ahead of their World Cup qualifier against Senegal, and they're keen not to repeat the mistakes of their AFCON qualifying campaign. And in an ongoing sponsorship legal battle, the commercial arm of Western Province Rugby is set to be liquidated. Stick around, 10:40, I'll bring you all of this in more detail. But for now, it is back to Evan, who's got the news.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. Kendall Makamate will be back at around 10:40 to give us a complete sports wrap of the morning. Now, we'll start in the US. Yes, America will vote in just under 3 hours' time. Now, they must decide between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. One candidate will win to become the next US president. Now, the US must choose between Hillary's vision of unity and her promise to take back power, well, from Washington's corrupt elites. Clinton made stops in 3 battleground states and deployed US President Barack Obama as his cheerleader-in-chief in another before they were to join up at the star-studded grand finale in the city of Philadelphia. Trump, on the other hand, sneered at Clinton's choice of pop stars to attract the crowds and stuck to his speech, each new version slightly more aggressive than the last. Trump's vow to rip up America's free trade deals, build a wall on the Mexican border and renegotiate the U.S. treaty alliances has spooked world markets seeking stability after the recent global slowdown. Some 40 million Americans have already cast ballots in states that allowed early voting, and tens of millions more will turn out later today for what is shaping up to be a historic clash. Clinton, the 69-year-old former First Lady, Senator and Secretary of State, has had a narrow but consistent lead in the opinion polls as she strives to become America's first woman president. But the campaign has been a bruising one. She's been haunted by allegations that she put U.S. secrets at risk on her private email server, while at the State Department, support for Trump dropped after footage emerged of him bragging about sexual assault, and at least a dozen women came forward to accuse him of it. Despite this, polls have tightened as the big day is now upon us.
Free kisses for Hillary. Get your free kisses for Hillary here.
I find Trump terrifying. I think there's something mentally wrong with him. It's all about him. He's like a 15-year-old kid who is just so full of his ego. And if he becomes president, we'll never get him out of the office.
It's time to drain the swamp. You know what that means? It means that the corruption in this country has been shown to everyone, and this is our chance with our votes to end it.
We are saying that we do not want Donald Trump to be president of the United States, that he would be a disaster. And we think Hillary is the only one to be elected president of the United States. She has the qualifications and the talent to be president. He cannot possibly do the job.
Black models support Donald Trump all day, every day. I support them because for many years this country, and especially minorities, have trusted and put this country in the trust of politicians. Donald Trump is not a politician, and I know that we can trust him.
No Trump! Dump Trump! No Trump!
These voters will decide who will be the next commander-in-chief of the United States of America. Sophie Mkwena, SABC News, New York.
Now, President Jacob Zuma has arrived in the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, to attend a high-level meeting on political and security crises afflicting Libya. The issues in Libya has forced African leaders, including President Zuma, to convene an emergency meeting, which is aimed at crafting new strategies to prevent Libya from sliding further into chaos. Yesterday, the president was in Tembisa to begin government's Imbizo focus, which looks at the needs of the community.
Delighted Mahulana peoples. The Chinese government making a goodwill gesture. President Jacob Zuma led an entourage to the school.
I just want you to know that this relationship is a serious one, and therefore it must be taken seriously. They helped us to learn how to fight and liberate ourselves. They made us good, empowered freedom fighters. They are now helping us to empower us so that we can govern our country with expertise, excellently, in a smart way.
The children are the future of the nation and the hope of our friendship. We feel very glad, very honored that we can do something for the children.
Basic Education Minister Enju Mutsaga, meanwhile, said the department is still investigating the leakage of the matric maths paper 2.
The Hawks are investigating. We're speaking to Treasury. We want to also get special investigators so that we move much more quicker and are able to arrest the problem, because there are still big papers coming.
The Imbizo Focus Week initiative by government is a face-to-face interaction of government and communities. Nhlanhla Gathane, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, time now to shift our focus. Wine workers in the industry contribute to considerable wealth of the sector and the economy. Yet, in the documentary Bitter Grapes, Slavery in the Vineyards, produced and directed by Tom Heineman, who depicts a reality that most wine consumers are unaware of. appalling working conditions, earnings below the minimum wage, long shifts, ill health from toxic pesticides used in those vineyards are but a few of the challenges facing farm workers. However, none of them are empowered in any meaningful way for their livelihood. Now, this Danish journalist, Tom Heinemann, the director of the film Bitter Grapes, visited wine farms in South Africa's countryside in the Western Cape. Let's just take a quick look at the short clip before we talk to him.
Gets to the table is not a straightforward journey.
You still have that you are worth less than me. You are my employee.
You will see people that looks like slaves.
Often farm workers are denied the most basic conditions of labor.
And you are paid 130 rands for 12 hours. So no overtime.
It is a clear violation of South African laws.
Ons kry 105 rand per dag. Have you said that to the farmer, that the minimum wage is 128?
Ek kan nie daarop sê dat maar net tevrede wees wat ek ons gee.
Skema se so mavana wa ufune ubatla bese fast. So how size that fast to tla pay tšhelete nyenyana.
Die boere ek kan maar sê hulle was varkerig met ons. Toe kom dit so toe kry ek my union.
On many farms, farmers don't like union, even though it's a constitutional right for workers to join in a union.
En toen is nou verder gegaan. En toen die indag het ons nou een uitval gehad, ik kan nog los.
He victimized workers, he intimidate workers, he charge workers, that's murder workers.
People saying that apartheid is gone, but if we go into our rural areas, apartheid is still very much alive.
Have you had any training in using this? No training.
Anything like that is toxic. It's designed to kill. We might understand the acute toxicity well, but we understand the chronic long-term effects much more poorly.
Do it as a designer, so that there are so many designers. So,
as a consumer, you have to help to change those conditions.
Me, as a poor person who's working with this manual labor, I'm getting nothing. I'm become poor.
Yeah, it's a documentary that's caused a big stir in South Africa and in Denmark, where some South African wines have been taken off the shelves. Now, this is our question that we're asking you at this time. Do you believe this story of slavery on South Africa's wine farms? Now, we are fortunate to be joined via Skype from Copenhagen in Denmark, the man who made this documentary, Tom Heinemann. Tom, very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us on Newsroom.
Thank you for being. Yes. Good morning.
Tom, just give us a quick idea. You did this investigation. Tell us, what did you find on the vineyards here in South Africa?
I found utter poverty, very bad housing, very bad working condition, and very low wages, sometimes below the minimum wages. That was what I described in my film.
Now, the critics here in South Africa, the farmers themselves, their representatives and so forth, the co-ops, they've come out and they've said, oh, this guy, Tom Heinemann, he's got a hidden agenda with this thing. And he's made a very biased program. What's your response to them?
Well, of course they have to say so. But the unfortunate thing about this documentary is that they refuse to participate in my film. And that gives a challenge to a filmmaker like me to sort of be balanced in the way that I presented the critique. Every single word that has been brought forward in this film has been presented in due time to all the farmers, to all the owners, and they refuse to talk to me. I don't know why. I think it was a bad decision from their side, but it's up to them. I'm a journalist. I respect if people don't want to talk with me. That's fine, but that's not going to stop my story.
Tom, would you say you still saw apartheid in these rural communities and in these vineyards and small towns where you visited?
I can say this far that what I saw is a very deprived group of workers who is probably among the lowest paid in South Africa. They are really scared of reprisals. I had to blur a lot of the people I talked to. Many people did not appear in my film of fear of the farmer, because they believe that standing up in my documentary would mean reprisals on them, even though it's a constitutional right in South Africa to speak out and have the freedom of expression. But many of the people I talked to, they did. So is that apartheid? Well, it's difficult to say, but some of the participants in the film, the union Sikula Sonke, clearly expressed that if you go to the rural areas, you will still see that apartheid is very much alive. Now I'm quoting her directly.
Now, we've seen that these South African wines, Van Loveren family vineyards, they've been temporarily suspended by the Braid Fair Trade. Do you think South African fairs and trade fairs and the like should go the same route and really go up against this farm, like we've seen in your country?
Well, the Van Loveren case, where Fairtrade has suspended them now for 6 months, is because Van Loveren's farm, Pegorie, has made serious violations on their own Fairtrade standards that they have signed. This, I investigated that story but couldn't bring it in my film because the investigations by Fairtrade was not done yet. But now it's been out that Van Loveren is not correspondent with the same rules that they undersigned. So I think Fairtrade is a good initiative, and as far as I know, South African wine is amongst the biggest Fairtrade labeled wines. But that also demands that the farms needs to comply with the standards, and if they don't, they will be sort of excluded for a period of time, or if they don't live up to these rules, they will be excluded forever.
What do you think needs to happen to improve the lives of those people that you saw on the farms?
That's a big question. I think the stakeholders, meaning that the unions, the farmers, the government, in a way must sit down and talk this over. If I'm the messenger boy here, I'll be honored if that would take place. I know that the Ministry of Labour is currently working on investigating various farms after my film, and I think that's fine if this comes out in the open. I mean, it's you cannot hide the truth.
You cannot hide the truth. That's what we're going to take away from this. Tom Heineman, thank you very much for joining us and doing this fantastic documentary highlighting slavery in our vineyards. Yes, it's a serious allegation, but you can only reflect what you see. That's what Tom Heineman did. He's live via Skype from Copenhagen in Denmark right now. Now we've taken it further ourselves here on the Newsroom show, as we always do. The Western Cape Economic Opportunities Department, they say they're investigating these allegations of widespread labour law violations as shown in the documentary Bitter Grapes, Slavery in the Vineyards. Now, the department is still verifying reports that some Denmark supermarkets have removed South African wines from their shelves following a screening of the documentary. It's just over a week ago now. Provincial Minister of Economic Opportunities in the Western Cape, Alan Wind, said importers shouldn't base their opinion of the South African wine industry solely on a documentary on the working conditions of many local farm labourers. That's an interesting take, isn't it? We spoke to Daryl Jacobs, who's the Deputy Director General at the Department of Agriculture.
Look, certainly the information that emerged in the documentary is of immense concern to us. The MEC has also gone on record as of saying that we view it in a very serious light. And we certainly want to leave no stone unturned to investigate the veracity of the allegations and ensure that if it's found to be true, that it is in fact dealt with as swiftly as possible.
So would I be correct to say this is the first time that you as a department have encountered such allegations in the wine industry?
Look, I think, one needs to understand that there have been several reports brought out. There was one at the start of this year around the conditions within the agricultural sector with regards to farm workers. It was brought out by, I think it's Margaret Visser on behalf of the International Labour Organization, which in fact found that the conditions on our farms with regards to workers was very favorable, with no major violations. I'm also aware that there have been other studies that have been undertaken, including an investigation done recently by the Department of Labour in terms of their inspectors on one of the farms, incidentally enough, that is covered in the documentary. That report had indicated that, and this was the middle of August, that the farm was fully compliant with all labour laws. And for us, it is a major concern that, you know, barely 2 months later, a documentary emerges
that goes against the grain. It goes against the grain and points to widespread abuses on the same farms in labour itself. That is actually quite interesting that that's come out. And surely, DDG, this might point to maybe the quality of the previous investigations that have been done.
Could very well be, and that's exactly what we're saying. We need to investigate fully the veracity of these allegations. To simply respond on the basis of a documentary, where we've not had an opportunity to investigate those same allegations on those farms, and to respond without that investigation would be foolhardy. And that is why we have met with the Department of Labour. Between the Department of Agriculture and the Department of Labour, we've now formed a joint task team. And tomorrow and Friday, we will be going onto those farms to conduct a detailed investigation of the conditions of farm workers.
All right, now I get that. Now, please, can you give us an understanding of what actually this really means in the world of economics and so on and so forth? Because we know there's some 36 billion rands worth of value to the GDP in terms of the wine industry itself. How does it affect South Africa and the Cape wine industry if Denmark really is pulling off all the South African wine off the shelves?
Well, I'm not aware that they're pulling of all of the wines, but we know there has been an impact and that certain wines have been pulled off the shelves. We are obviously wanting to conclude this investigation as soon as possible so that we can inform all parties at both a global level as to the veracity of these allegations. And if found to be true, the interventions that we as a department, together with Department of Labour, will be instituting to ensure that if there are such breaches, that it is dealt with as soon as possible.
DDG, I'm going to cut your word. I'm going to cut your word because I really want to find out from you, when is it that we can expect to get your findings?
The findings should be made available on Monday. So, as I said, the investigation will be done by Friday evening. The report will be compiled at that point, and I'll be tabling it to MEC Alan Windy on Monday.
No, that's very good. And can you just give us briefly what transformation has gone on in the wine industry since 1994 to date?
Look, you know, again, there are very many examples that can be quoted in terms of practical transformation where ownership has shifted from white commercial hands into black hands. We have examples, for example, of Demersfontein. In Wellington, we have Bosman Adama. The Mark Solom's example in terms of Solom's Delta has been well documented. So there have been very many examples where ownership has shifted from white hands to black. And so the issue of transformation is being driven aggressively by both our Department of Agriculture in the Western Cape, by Vinpro, which is our commodity partner for the wine industry, and together with the Department of Rural Development and Land Reform at national level, which has the primary mandate for land transformation or for the transformation in terms of land ownership.
Macro is going big on festive season savings by bringing you cooking deals like the Brabantia 7-piece stainless steel cookware set, only 1199, save 300 Rand. We're mixing things up with a Russell Hobbs jug blender for only 599, save 300 Rand. And save 500 Rand on the Russell Hobbs Legacy Breakfast Pack, now only 999. Share in these and other big festive savings for home, for business, for life. Only at Macro, big on life.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Yeah, welcome back. Very good morning to you if you've just joined us. Of course, right now we're looking at, well, the documentary, Slavery in the Vineyard. It's called Bitter Grapes. Now, we ask of you, do you believe this story of slavery on South Africa's wine farms? It's not a new accusation. It's been one that's been around for, well, some say hundreds of years. Now, let's take a look at your tweets. What are you saying to the question we're asking you with regards to slavery on our vineyards? Jay says, Bitter Grapes, what has the government dealt with the issue, particularly the Department of Labour? They say in the Western Cape, they say that they are busy looking at it. Shay Castro, he says, Newsroom, is high time we boycott their businesses in solidarity of farm workers. Hashtag Bitter Grapes. That one from Shay Castro. Then Shafana Zulu says, Newsroom, no, I don't believe in that. Then Motsamai Mkalane says, Newsroom, Bitter Grapes, yes, that goes without saying. It's well documented. Blame it on the legacy of apartheid, says Motsamai. Jumbo, he says, yes, indeed, the documentary is just the tip of the iceberg. I see it on a daily basis, says Jumbo. This one from Muhammad Arai, he says, slavery always existed and now it's at its peak. Nothing to be surprised about, unfortunately, Newsroom. This one from Jamie says, I do believe in the Rex River Valley, Buddha treat black and coloreds like slaves. I can name and shame them easily, says Jamie. Wow, that's interesting, very interesting. Treat them like slaves? Well, it's caused quite a bit of a stir, I can tell you. Let's continue this discussion on slavery in the vineyards. We were joined by the association that looks to transform the wine industry so that it is truly representative across the whole value chain. That's the Black Association of the Wine and Spirit Industry, called BAVC. The president, Nozi Peterser, spoke to us.
As far as I'm concerned, it's a true reflection of the current realities experienced by certain farm workers on certain farms.
Very interesting that you say that. Just a little earlier, we spoke to the Deputy Director General from the Western Cape Department of Agriculture, Daryl Jacobs, and he was of the opinion that we've had several other investigations that were looking into farm labourers' conditions, and this is a surprise that there's such a thing that's come out, and totally in contra to what you're saying.
Okay, let me explain to you that for some people, this might come as a surprise. But for people who are working every day on the farms, this is what we observe, and this is indeed the situation experienced by the workers.
There was a strike at the Robertson Winery about 2 months ago. Do you think that has anything to do with what we found in this documentary?
Yeah, I think, of course, it has something to do with it because it also reflects on the levels of salary. That was a salary dispute as far as we know. but there were also other issues raised, issues of freedom of association, etc. But these things is not new. It's not. The media should not be strangers to these facts. We have been saying to the media, why are you ignoring us? If you look at in 2012, before the strike, Bosi did a research on 65 farms. And then when we released it, we almost have had no attendance of the media. A few days later, the Human Rights Watch delivered a similar report, actually vindicating Bosi and confirming the details in our report. The only difference with our report and their report is we named the farmers and also the owners.
Now, please tell us, in terms of what we've been hearing coming out of from the DDG and his surprise at what's being caught in this particular documentary, and what you say is really happening on the ground, where do you think that the gap lies? Because they've done investigations, you say the workers are living the experience. Where's the gap in that information?
You see, I think the situation is as such. I just told you now that in 2012, we have done a research. That same year, that is before the 2012-2013 strike, that same year, 3 days or 4 days later, Human Rights Watch also released a report. After the strike, we did what we refer to as a post 105 rand per day state of the farms. We released that report. We spoke, I did a presentation to the Agriculture Portfolio Committee. I did a presentation at the union buildings. I did a presentation at the Parliament. So the media, government, and industry leaders, they know what is happening on farms. They are not strangers to that information. They have it. It is well documented. They just tend to ignore it, and they are ignoring it at their peril. You can see this happening.
Yes.
People only tend to take you serious when you hurt their bank balance or when you embark on violence. It is only then that you have been hurt. Farm workers have always been ignored, but when 2012-2013 came, and because of all the violence, farm workers was all of a sudden hurt. After 2012, we continue to complain about the negation of the hard fought in King's, where 3 people died, hundreds were arrested, hundreds were dismissed, and hundreds were maimed for the rest of their lives. But we were ignored after that.
Mr. Peterson.
And now all of a sudden
Mr. Peterson, sorry to cut your word there. I want to check with you now. You mentioned 105 Rand a day wages that these workers get. That equates to just over 2,000 Rand. Certainly not much, especially in the economy that we live in this day and age. What other incentives are given to farm workers to supplement that 2,000 Rand plus per month?
Let me tell you this. Remember, I spoke earlier about the post-implementation of the 105 Rand per day. You know, immediately after the promulgation of the 105 Rand per day, the farm workers went all out on advice of their lawyers and the consultants. They then negate whatever hard-fought gains workers made by imposing rent where rent wasn't paid before, and where it was paid before, they increased the rent. They imposed electricity payments where it was earlier required to pay electricity, they increased it. They took away transport and forced people to pay for transport. People had to pay for crashes. In some instances, people even took home less than what they took home before the strike. So now the issue really is, you're asking me now about these wages. I want just to draw your attention to the fact that, what do you think did farm workers earn in 1994 if we had to die in 2012 for 100 rand, 150 rand and only got 105. They were earning at that time, say that they are so disappointed to hear this is slavery wages, when that is the BFAP report stated that that was not enough, even back then at 2012, and we know how much the cost of living has increased by now.
Yeah, slave wages, slavery on the farms. That's what we're looking at today. Now, the Wine and Agricultural Trading Association, in turn, say Tom Heineman's documentary on the harsh conditions of farm workers only selectively reveals conditions on a few farms. They say it reflects a very narrow narrative of the progress that the wine industry had made in promoting and respecting farm workers' rights. Now, we interviewed Linda Liparoni, who's the CEO of the Wine and Agricultural Trading Association.
Well, when you see the documentary, it's obviously quite shocking. You know, the footage is very cleverly put together. But I do think it's important to understand that he's focused on 3 farms, and many of the issues that he's presented are actually broader rural issues. You know, he focuses on alcohol abuse, he focuses on the lack of housing and the state of informal settlements in some of our rural towns. And these are issues that, you know, are far wider than the wine industry. These are rural poverty-related issues. And so from our point of view, we're saying that it is rather biased. It in no way reflects the kinds of practices that we find on wine farms and in the wine industry. And there's a lot of work that we've done in the wine industry and that the wine industry, along with trade unions, have worked on over the last couple of years. And so it does paint a very sad but rather slanted picture of what is actually happening in reality.
And you speak about the fact that it speaks to broader social issues that are taking place in rural areas. Would you say that there's slavery on wine farms at all?
Well, slavery is a very loaded term. You know, I mean, what do you understand about slavery? Slavery is actually, you know, slavery is a systemic system of exploitation, and we don't have that in South Africa. You know, within our new democracy, I think we've learned a lot about development, and we've learned a lot about coming together in dialogue. The wine industry, as well as the fruit industry, has undergone many international ethical and environmental audits. And if there was slavery, we would certainly know about it.
And also you say you've done a lot to contribute to the industry as a whole. What kind of progress have you made to protect the right of workers?
We can actually monitor quite a lot of progress that's been made in terms of worker rights. And I think some of the more substantial things that we begin to see is movement and development in terms of getting seasonal workers protected, so getting them contracts, making sure that they are paid fair wages. We also see certain rights, occupational health and safety rights. Those are very many tangible things that we've put into place in terms of producers having to train their workers in occupational health and safety to ensure the workplace is a safe environment. We've also looked at things like child labour, which we very rarely find on farms. I think the most challenging of all is probably issues around freedom of association, where we're still looking to build trusting relationships between producers and the trade unions. So that's still areas that I think organisational rights issues in agriculture is still a challenge, and we need to spend a lot of time having dialogue on how the parties can come together to trust one another more. But there have been certainly quite a lot of positive movements in terms of many of the rights that are covered in the WETA Ethical Code.
You speak a lot about the relationship with the workers and the employers. Any sense what the workers themselves are saying at this stage?
I think the challenge is always going to be with workers to ensure that communication is open, that there is open and trusting relationships on farms, that workers feel that they can comfortably raise issues, raise grievances with their managers and with their employers. And I think very often as workers, we're actually scared to raise those issues with our bosses. And I think that's where we need to work a lot harder to put in place the right mechanisms, the right forms of communication. We're spending quite a lot of time having discussion sessions with workers to try and bring issues to the attention of the employers and to say these are the kinds of things that workers feel they can't necessarily raise with you directly, that we would raise on behalf of the workers. We've actually got, there's several unions working within the agricultural sector and within wine in particular. And the unions operate in terms of, they've got a union coalition that work together, which in fact is very important in terms of sharing resources and building capacity amongst the unions. From a wheat perspective, we have a very good relationship and an open relationship with the unions. And even with Kasau, who was featured in the documentary. We are having discussions. In fact, tomorrow we have a discussion on how to promote and enhance freedom of association and look at mechanisms to improve the relationship between the trade unions and the industry. So there are very many opportunities at the moment, even within the wine industry at the level of what we call the wine industry value chain roundtable, where we've got labour coming together with government and with the industry to actually look at resolving issues, understand and identify programs for development going forward. So I think at this point in time, there are quite a lot of opportunities for us to sit around a table and not only to have discussions, but also to start identifying what proactive actions, remedial actions, as well as developmental actions we can jointly consider going forward.
Yeah, that's Linda Liporoni. She's the CEO of the Wine and Agricultural Trading Association, saying, as far as they're concerned, it's not an issue. We're asking you the question of the day today. The question relates to, well, bitter grapes, slavery on the vineyards. That's what it's called. We ask you, do you believe the story of slavery on South African wine farms? Do you believe that the people are being treated badly? For generations, some claims are. You've heard the unions, you've heard the trading associations, you've even heard the documentary maker. In the next hour, we'll escalate this discussion even a little bit further with Elvis. But time now for us to go to Kendall for a sports update. In the next hour, don't forget, we'll talk about slavery on the vineyards. Kendall, before you do the sport, you've done quite a few of these interviews with regards to it. What's your sentiment when someone like Linda Liporoni comes out and says, she don't see a problem, they're busy addressing this?
Yeah, look, it goes back to the conversation I had with Nozi Pieterse, who's at the heart of it, who's actually been on the receiving end of this bad behavior. And I tell you what, it makes it very hard to believe that they have not seen anything, that Linda Liporoni has not seen anything, that they've got their hearts and minds and souls in it to try and help the worker. It's very difficult for me to believe that.
Anyhow, we'll talk more about this in the next hour. Time for a sport now.
Thank you very much, Eben, and good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports. In the sports today, top of our stories is really about the big story, our big sports focus for today, where the commercial arm of the Western Province Rugby is set to be liquidated. This announcement that they've obtained a court order allowing them to file for provisional liquidation was made at a press conference by their president, Thilo Wakefield, and CEO Paul Zaks.
The Cape Town-based Western Province Pty Limited have struggled financially with a dip in sponsorships and ticket sales. The liquidation application, though, is linked to a breach of contract claim made by Aerius Pty Ltd of a reported amount of 72 million rand. The claim is said to be related to the HSBC Cape Town Sevens event after the event was moved from Port Elizabeth. The other issue involves DHL, who is the headline sponsor of the Stormers and Western Province. The lawsuit is in addition to the 11 million rand loss that the Western Province Rugby Union was going to announce at the end of this year. This is now officially the third union to file for liquidation in 2016, the others being Border Rugby Union and the AP Kings. Western Province, though, is the first of the big 5 unions in South African rugby to have filed for liquidation. Wakefield said the Western Province Rugby Football Union will not be affected by liquidation, despite being a 75% shareholder, and that their commitments to player contracts would not be affected. Zaks, who is the CEO of the union, has been tasked with managing the turnaround strategy, which will be implemented immediately.
And other news making headlines, this weekend's FIFA World Cup qualifier against Senegal is a must-win for Bafana Bafana, even though it's only their second match of the campaign. Anything less than a win, and they could find themselves playing catch-up, something that happened recently during the Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers after they dropped points they really shouldn't have. All the players have arrived in camp, and the team is already assembled in Polokwane, where the match will be played.
Bafana Bafana meet an in-form Senegal team. Currently ranked second on the continent, they also top Group D of the World Cup qualifiers. They recently won all 6 matches on their way to qualify for the 2017 AFCON tournament in Gabon. It's a strong team that cannot be taken lightly. They also have the reputation of selecting their strongest available players for important fixtures, and the same will apply this weekend with a number of foreign-based players in the Senegalese squad.
What I like about them, they don't take any tournament light. Every game that they play to them means a lot to them. Yes, you're quite right. They're going to bring all their foreign-based players, and that alone puts them at a little bit of an edge above us. But in a game, it's not about who you have, eh? It's what they can do to see to it that the team does well. We're expecting, yes, a very tough match.
Bafana Bafana are yet to lose a competitive match at home under the guidance of Sheikhs Mashaba. But victories have been hard to come by. In 6 matches, 5 have ended deadlocked, while a win came in 2014 against Sudan. The importance of a result at home can never be overemphasized.
Sometimes when teams come here, they sit back, defend deep and make it difficult for us to break them down. But we know we've got enough quality in our squad to break any nation down. And as long as we stick to the game plan, we make sure we give the attacking players a solid foundation at the back, so they know that they can push forward in numbers. And hopefully we can be clinical. I think we've always created chances.
Winning the fixture in Polokwane will elevate Bafana Bafana to the top of the group. And with the long international break before the qualifiers resume next August, that will certainly be a psychological advantage and something to hold on to. Lebantube, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, South Africa have recorded an emphatic 177-run victory over Australia in the first cricket test at the Waka in Perth. Now, fast bowler Kagiso Rabada's 4th 5-wicket haul in his 9th test match was instrumental in the Australians being bundled out so cheaply. They were bundled out for 361 in their second innings, completing one of the Protes' best test comebacks ever.
After being bundled out for just 242 on day 1, and Australia coasting to 158 without loss early on day 2, as well as the loss of chief wicket-taker Dale Steyn to a shoulder injury, not many would have put their money on the Proteas, not only to bounce back, but to secure a crushing victory. But that's exactly what they did. In the absence of the Steyn remover, it was Rabada who took up the mantle, and he did it in style. The Aussies were 169 for 4 overnight, but by lunchtime on day 5, a rampant Rabada had all but guaranteed a famous South African victory, having reduced the hosts to 263 for 7.
Rabada goes down and kisses the Wacker pitch. He's got himself 5 wickets, and doesn't he deserve it?
It was the 21-year-old's 4th 5-wicket haul in just his 9th test.
It's never easy with 2 seamers, but all you can ask for is the guys to put their hands up. KG was phenomenal. To run in for 31 overs on a deck that was still good to bat on, and to get the results in the end was just a great achievement for him, so I'm really proud of him.
It's bowled superbly well.
Rabada's ability to swing the ball both conventionally and reverse proved too much for Australia's batters, as his total of 7 wickets earned him the Man of the Match award. But the youngster, almost businesslike, still has his feet firmly on the ground, adamant that it was a team effort that saw the Proteas home.
I think all the bowlers have a job to do, and that's to take wickets. So when Dale's gone, it means that we have to do extra. Myself and Vern got in the right areas and really asked the Australian batsmen some key questions because they've got a good batting lineup. So I thought we executed very well. I can confidently say there will be not a lot of bowling in the next few days to come, but I'll be ready for Hobart if I get chosen.
The Proteas take a 1-0 lead in the 3-match series as they extended their unbeaten record at the Wacker to 4 test matches. The next test starts in Hobart on Saturday. Samantha Mari, SABC News.
Now, his captain, Faf du Plessis, has described this victory as the best test match of my career. The Proteas put in a spirited effort with only 2 seamers after injury to Dale Steyn, had him move out of the match and go 1 up in the 3-match series against Australia, which then moves to Hobart later this week. Now here are Faf du Plessis, the captain, and Kagiso Rabada, the man of the moment.
Certainly from my career that I've been involved in, that's one of the most special days to turn it around 100 or 360 degrees from day one, where we were under the pump and under a lot of pressure, and especially with the position that we're in. To turn it around day two for me is, as I said, one of the best days of cricket I've been involved in. To have a seamer down pretty much the whole test match, and to do what we've done. We always joke about it, that if you lose a seamer in a 3-seamer attack, it's 99% impossible to try and win a game of test cricket, because it's just too much of a workload on the bowlers, and somehow we managed to do it. And obviously there's a lot of credit that goes to this man over here. He's put up his hand and he's bowled really well. And also Keshav, he's been a guy that just relentlessly bowled in a good area and made sure that we can rotate the guys from the other end, and just put a bit of pressure. So yeah, that's right up there with the best games or test matches for me in my career.
Well, obviously it's not nice losing the best bowler in the world, especially knowing that you're going to be reduced to 2 seamers. But I still had the belief that myself, Vern, Keshav and JP, all the other bowlers, were going to put their hand up, and it happened. It's a bit of a challenge, to be honest with you, because you know that workloads are going to be really tough, and your part-timers are going to have to step up and do something, and with a bit of luck maybe get a wicket or two, and Temba produced that for us. We could have had 3 for today, but it's a nice challenge. Like I always say, I enjoy strategic talent challenges where you can test yourself and make sure you do a little bit out of the box things and try things when it's not expected. Luckily, most things work this test match. There's going to be days when it doesn't work. But it was a tough challenge, yeah. 2 seamers. Hopefully I don't have to deal with that too much in the future of my captaincy. The Aussies play pace well. They've been...
We have to cut out of it. We definitely have to cut out of this one, because we're going to the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court, where Mqebo Dlamini, the Fees Must Fall leader, is applying for bail. Let's go there live to hear what's going on.
Y and Z. And then 4E is even more stringent. That's the one that Krikla said it must be used only in rare circumstances. Says it must be established that in exceptional circumstances, there is a likelihood that the release of the accused will disturb the public order or undermine the public peace or security. Now, let's just quickly go to the facts of this case, Malone. You have a situation where, in a clear attempt to, as I say, to remove the appellant from the university. Firstly, spurious charges are put against him, and I will go to the charges at a later stage. But once those charges have been put, then at the bail stage, knowing that some of the charges will have to be proved in a trial, and that's the danger of the so-called punitive detention without trial. Because you can charge a person with anything, knowing full well that the trial will never happen or he will succeed in the trial. It doesn't matter. As long as we just remove him for now. If he wins the case in 2 years' time, well, that's so be it. And so what you get, my Lord, with the greatest respect, is, I'll just give you one example to illustrate that these charges don't hold any water whatsoever. At page 13 of Bundle 1, must apologize again, my Lord. We know we should have done a continuous bundle, but there are 2. Page 13, my Lord, yes. On top of it, it will say Annexure A. The record, my Lord, is in 2 bundles. Yeah, bundle. That's correct, my Lord. Page, on paginated page 13. Yeah. Yes. Now, you know, big promise, public violence. This is the charge. Now, if you look at the charge, my lord, it's actually pathetic. It says that on or about the 4th of October, at or near the University of the Witwatersrand, the regional division of Gauteng, the accused and diverse other persons numbering in excess of 20 did unlawfully assemble with the common intent to forcibly disturb the public peace or security or invade the rights of other persons. And the said accused acting in concert. This is what now the highlight, what they did. They did then unlawfully and intentionally disrupt the academic activities of the University of the Witwatersrand. That's all. Where's the violence? All that is being said here is that a group of students of more than 20 disrupted academic activities. Now, it shows you the true motive. It's got nothing to do with violence. It is to put a charge which is political in nature, which says, well, if you're going to disturb other students that are studying, then we're going to deal with you. All the charges are like that. I don't want to waste the court's time. But they can be criticized in that same manner. So let's then come to what it is that is alleged, that the applicant is alleged to have done. Firstly, there's the issue of the so-called propensity. It is said that he has a propensity, A, to disobey court orders, and B, to act violently. Let's try and look at both of those propositions. The first one is quite laughable. It is based on a court order, which is on page 27, my lord. Of bundle A. Your Lordship got it, yes. Your Lordship will notice very immediately that this court order is dated 25 April 2016. The appellant is not anywhere cited in that court order. The appellant says that he was not aware of this court order. But in any event, my lord, there is nothing whatsoever that links this, whatever it is that was being interdicted on the 25th of April 2016, to the current Fees Must Fall campaign, which, as we know, was sparked in September, only in September, by the announcement of the Minister of Education of an 8% increase. So you just get thrown with a piece of paper that has no relevance whatsoever to the current proceedings. We don't know what it is. Who are these people who are cited here? And it... Are these not students? I don't know, my lord. They may or they may not be. They may be workers. No, nobody knows. That's exactly the point. The point is that, and the tenuous basis upon which our learned colleague wanted to include Mr. Dlamini was under the 7th respondent, participants in protest action engaged in unlawful activities. What? This might have been a boycott about food or working conditions or whatever. On what basis can you then say in September, in another protest that is sparked, its common cause is sparked by activities in September, October, and then you say a person who's not even a party to this thing is violating, quote unquote, absolutely, exactly, violate prospectively, as it were. But you also violate something you don't even know exist, or at least in respect of which there's no proof that whose existence that you are aware of, and so on and so on. So again, my lord, it's one of the, all these charges have got great promise. Oh, you violated the court order, and therefore you have a propensity. But you can't have a propensity when we can't even prove that you ever violated a court order even once. The propensity must at least have a basis of something that has happened in real life, which is likely to be repeated. That's what we call propensity. So if you fail on base 1, you can't even prove that you actually ever violated, then how much more about the future? So it's all trumped up charges, which even just at scratching the surface, you find that this is just nothing else but a political persecution.
But the judge didn't even order that this order should be pinned to the principal place.
That's correct, Palo. In the university.
The university.
Yes, that is so, my lord.
Other than, I mean, there's no clause, order rather, which stipulates this. You know, like
There is, my lord. There is paragraph 4. Paragraph 4, yes. Paragraph 4.2.
4.2.
Yeah.
Okay.
But your lordship is correct. The point is, let's assume firstly, we don't know if it was done. But let's assume in favor of the university that it was done, my lord. So what? Let's say it was done. Let's even assume that it was put at prominent places. The question is, what has that got to do with the current protests? How do you say you don't release this man from detention because some other people who were protesting in April, maybe at medical school or wherever? We don't know. The point of the matter is that we don't know. Maybe they were protesting about sporting facilities, and then they caused. There is no linkage. The point of the matter, my lord, there's no linkage between this. And also, it doesn't say when it expires. It's open-ended. Yeah, and my lord, for the purposes of this argument, it is simply to say that here's another spurious basis upon which the so-called propensity is based. Now, the second reason why your lordship should deprive the appellant of his constitutional rights to liberty and his rights to education and his rights to political participation and all that goes with it, is that it is said that there's a chance that he will disturb the peace by causing violence. So let's inspect that one. Now that we've taken away the question of the so-called court orders. That, my lord, is based on, I don't even want to call it evidence. What my learned colleague did was to produce, firstly, he promised that he would produce video evidence at the magistrate's court hearing. Not only did he promise that, but so did the policeman who produced the only evidence, the only affidavit. If your lordship goes to page 22, yes, that's Rafapa. Sergeant Rafapa. He says that on Tuesday the 4th, the accused was part of a group of protesting students at the University of Witwatersrand. I'm reading at paragraph 7, sorry, my lord. There were numerous police officials and other persons present on the campus who were filming the protest. There is footage on the accused in possession of various dangerous weapons in the form of rocks and sticks. The possession of these dangerous weapons continues whilst the accused addresses the protesting students on the university grounds. The video footage further shows that the accused throwing a brick at a moving police vehicle and so on. Now, your lordship will see that there's promise in this affidavit of video footage of all these things. This is actually what happened at the hearing. this promise of the video footage was never actualized. All that was produced were 2 still photographs. I was looking for at 37. Actually, it starts at 35, my lord. I'm sorry, my lord. If you can start at the bottom of 34. The prosecutor says, my learned colleague says, Your Worship, the first thing that I wish to submit, the affidavit of the investigating officer indicates that there is indeed video footage. That's what we've just gone through. Of that video footage, we are in possession of still photographs that have been taken of that video footage. And then it goes on. And then it says, the first one, that's around about line 6, the first one being of what clearly can be seen in the video, but it is shown in here, a person from behind that the state alleges is Mr. Dlamini, throwing what appears to be a rock at a police vehicle. And the learned magistrate says, my lord, sorry, let me just mark this document. Why? Why does the state claim that the person on this photograph is the applicant before the court? Because it is a photograph of the rear of this person. In other words, all they brought was a photograph of somebody from the back. And then the prosecutor then says, Your Worship, in the video footage that there is of the day, and I wish to inform the court, I have myself viewed the video footage, he says. I'm not speaking of what is said by the police officers, blah, blah, blah. It's obviously not, my lord, with the greatest respect. You can't be testifying unless, of course, he was subsequently going to produce that evidence. I can assure you, my lord, it's common cause that never happened. And then the learned magistrate correctly says this at the bottom of the page. Okay, so to summarize, the state is in possession of some real evidence of which this is a still photograph, and from the real evidence, namely the video recording, it will emerge that this person on this photograph is indeed the applicant before the court. My learned colleague says, indeed so, Your Worship. Needless to say, that promise was a hollow promise, because it did not emerge ever, because the video evidence was never produced. And then again, at the bottom of page 36, the court says, this is now another still photograph of somebody allegedly throwing a brick. The court says, again, as far as this photograph is concerned, which is marked Exhibit C2, the person on the photograph is wearing a helmet, which is not possible to say, and neither is the court prepared to become a witness during these proceedings to identify the applicant before the court as the same person on this photograph. But to summarize then, if I understand you correctly, this photograph is a still photograph of the real evidence, a video recording that will show that this person is indeed the accused before the court. My learned friend, indeed so, Your Worship. So what do we have, my lord? We have the learned judge or this court or even the learned magistrate is expected to distill a likelihood that has been established that this accused person will in the future act violently. Why? Because he has done so in the past. But what do we have? The back of a person. And what we have, some unidentifiable person as the magistrate says, I'm not even prepared to be a witness in this case. And that person is even wearing a helmet. So that is all. How on earth is your lordship supposed to then extrapolate that this person is so dangerous, this person being now the appellant, is so dangerous that they must be kept in custody until the trial, which may happen in a year or two, simply based on such nonsensical presentation of evidence? The likelihood must be established. It must be established convincingly. This is convincingly cannot be used in the same sentence as what I've taken your lordship through. And with the greatest respect, that is all, my lord, that you have on the basis of which somebody's liberty is supposed to be challenged. And I'm going to I challenge my learned colleague to take this court through the basis upon which, A, it can be said that this accused person has a propensity to disobey court orders on the basis of what I've explained, and B, that firstly that it was him on those photographs, and even if it was him, whether what they say was happening was actually happening. Because in the other one, they claim to have a person and a brick which is flying in the air. Where it came from, we don't know. And if they had presented the video, but it's too late now because this is an appeal. So that's what we have, my lord. That's all you have before you, on the basis of which your lordship is supposed to conclude that sections 64A and 44E, which must be used sparingly in rare cases and in very exceptional circumstances, actually apply in this particular case. With the greatest respect, my lord, there is nothing of the sort that will be presented to you by my learned colleague. That I can guarantee. Now, the next question, my lord, is and for this, my lord, if I can take your lordship to page 32. The core of what we're going to present here is based on paragraphs 23 and 24. And I've just dealt with paragraph 23. I'll read them out. This is the affidavit that was presented by the appellant. These charges, I quote, although seemingly serious at face value, have no factual foundation, and I am confident that they will never be proved in any fair court process. I've already dealt with that. And he says, it is my honest view that these charges are politically motivated and a means to remove me, where it says from should be end, my lord, to remove me and others from leading the legitimate national call for free, quality, decolonized education. That is all. Now, my learned colleague is going to say that in respect of the second leg of that argument, where the appellant says that the charges are politically motivated and just a means to remove him, we are seeking to introduce a new fact. Well, nothing could be further from the truth, and I'll explain, my lord. Firstly, I've just read it, so it's not new. It was before the magistrate. All we have done, my lord, is to expand in the notice of appeal, is to expand on that proposition. And this is quite a serious matter, my lord, that I'm going to raise now. If your lordship goes to page 8, starting from paragraph 17. The notice says that the learned magistrate failed to take into account the uncontradicted evidence of the accused when he stated at paragraph 24 of his affidavit, which was submitted to court, that, and then it's the allegation of political motive. And he says at 18, even the slightest possibility of any truth in that statement would signal the grossest abuse of the rights of the accused and offend against the most basic values and freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. It would be reminiscent of the days of our shameful apartheid past, from which the Constitution was intended to mark a significant departure. In this regard, the above honorable court will be entitled to take into account the now notorious fact that the Minister of Justice has publicly confirmed that on the 10th of October 2016, and only a few days prior to the arrest and prosecution of the accused, the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Sean Abrams, met with the Minister and the President of the Republic of South Africa at Lutuli House in Johannesburg, which is the headquarters of the African National Congress, the ruling political party, to discuss the situation around the Fees Must Fall protest. My Lord, I'm sure it's common cause, but I would say it's a notorious. The reason why we use the word notorious, my Lord, is because it's something that the court could take judicial notice of. But I'll check with my learned friend if it's contested. Yes, my Lord, yes, no, it is common cause that it happened, but of course, my learned colleague will argue, as I said earlier, that it should not be taken into account. Well, he'll tell us. If it happened, if he agrees that it happened. Well, he can't because the Minister of Justice said it happened. And then at paragraph 20, we say, my Lord, this meeting constitutes the best evidence of the feared political interference and political motives behind the prosecution of the accused. In other words, this is not just a wild statement that is being made, my Lord. It is being linked with what was in front of the magistrate, with what the accused said in paragraph 24 of his affidavit. And then we said 21, which is where the gist is. It is difficult to conceive of any legitimate and lawful meeting between the Minister of Justice, the President, and the National Director of Public Prosecutions in respect of student protests. And apparently in the absence of the Ministers of Education and Finance or even the Commissioner of Police. The only reasonable conclusion is that the affected politicians sought unduly and improperly to influence the prosecution of student leaders, as has happened with the accused, who remains one of the most prominent leaders of the Fees Must Fall movement. 22, such interference is unconstitutional, and if subsequently established, as we have now established it, it will almost certainly result in the quashing of any charges tainted thereby. And if I may add, it might also result, as we read now, in the debarment of the NDPP. The accused has instructed his legal representatives to pursue this matter insofar as his personal liberty has been severely violated in the process. My Lord, this is not a playing matter. If this actually happened, what do we have here, my Lord? We have a situation, and I don't have to lecture your Lordship about the importance of the independence of prosecutions. The courts cannot be used to play political games. If any prosecutor worth their salt would know, firstly, my Lord, that if there's any unlawful activity at any university, then the people who must deal with that is the police. And the police, only after the police have dealt with it, should it then be escalated to the public prosecution. What on earth can a public prosecutor be discussing with the president and the Minister of Justice about protest action. Assume that protest action is all unlawful and bad and all that. But it is not the duty of a public prosecutor to go and discuss that, not to mention at the headquarters of a political party. So this is but proof of what the fear which was expressed by the accused person. And all these point to one direction and one direction only. This is a very well calculated means to suppress political opponents by using the same old tactics like before of detaining them without giving them a chance to be heard in court, and by painting them with silly charges such as the one that we have just gone through. Now, the only relevance at this stage, my lord, of this is not whether the charges might be quashed or not. It is simply that your lordship has to be mindful of the red flags that were identified in the Dlamini case by the Constitutional Court, that these provisions, insofar, in fact, my lord, your lordship will know that His Lordship, Mr. Justice Krichler, actually said that these provisions invade the rights of accused persons. But he then said, in terms of Section 36, they can be justified. So the fact that these are very intrusive provisions is beyond any question. It was just in that particular case, in view of the question of the constitutional challenge, found that they can, in a particular case, be justified. Oh, yes, that's a good and a natural place to pause, my lord. That's a good one.
Cebo Dlamini applying for bail there in the Magistrates Court now. We will go back there a little bit later as soon as they do return. We'll keep you abreast of the proceedings there. We'll take a break and we'll be right back after that.
The Divas of Kofifi were honored with a musical production, taking you through the highlights of the lives of these remarkable women.
I just played this little role where I show the life and times of Mam Dorothy Masuku from when she moved from Bulawayo to South Africa.
I'm playing Tandi in Bambana Klassen. She speaks her mind. She doesn't take no for an answer.
I will be playing Abigail Kubeka, who is one of the most prolific female icons in South Africa. She was a triple threat, which means she was a singer, dancer, actress.
For your weekly dose of arts and entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Big story of the day, as you know, United States votes later today with millions expected to head to the polls in a historic presidential election that could elect its first woman or first billionaire to the White House. President Jacob Zuma has arrived in the Ethiopian capital Addis Ababa to attend a high-level meeting on political and security crisis afflicting Libya. And TUT Shoshonguve campus has suspended face-to-face classes following disruptions while Feast Must Fall leader Kebo Dlamini applies for bail. Now, those are all your headlines. So let's now take a look at your top stories this hour. Community advocacy group Amandla Mobi is calling on organizers of the Wine X Festival to remove the Robertson Winery from its list of exhibitions this week amid a wage dispute with the workers. Now, we've been carrying this the previous hour. Now, there's been a public backlash against Robertson's after claims that workers are earning 3,000 rand per month. Denmark's biggest supermarket chains pulled South African wines off its shelves, including products from the winery, after a documentary was aired exposing what it is believed to be a violation of labor laws in the industry. Now, from Amanda Mobi, we spoke to Koketso Moeti.
Apparently, such a response would be inappropriate because, what they get is not too bad what the workers are getting. Unfortunately, the Robertson workers' strike started before the documentary was released, and on the day that the Wine X Festival kicked off, the Robertson workers' strike was actually entering its 9th week. And it's very interesting to compare and contrast the responses to the abuses in our vineyards, right? If you look at the fact that a documentary was released internationally and see the response there, in the last 9 weeks, we've had intense coverage about the Robertson workers' strike. Nobody has made a similar response, despite the fact that the workers have called for public support.
Now, Koketso, it's not like this is something that's fallen out of the skies on our laps. We've known for generations of the poor treatment of labourers on vineyards around South Africa. What do you then make of the fraternities' denial of this documentary? In some corners, they even go and say that, well, it's out of context and it's simply not true.
I think that, yes, there have been multiple reports over the years. We saw the major strike last time, and the country was shocked by how much people were still earning. And right now we have a situation in which South Africa, the conditions, the drought and all of that are having a huge impact on the cost of living. And this suggests that we should be dealing with this quite urgently. This is a serious issue. We also see the issue of Feast Must Fall has come up, and this is interconnected. The very same parents are the ones who can't send their kids on for further education. So the implications are that you have condemned generations of families to living in the same poverty.
Poverty, squalor, and slavery, as it's called by this documentary, bitter grapes, slavery in the vineyards. You've had a look at this documentary. How do you view it?
It is deeply disturbing. It is deeply disturbing. I cannot say that I am surprised by the findings, but it is quite deeply disturbing. And I think just in terms of what's been happening in terms of the wages and all of that, right now PAXA has come out with a report that shows to feed a family of 5 a nutritionally balanced diet, you need about 3,027 rand. Workers are earning...
That's for food only.
That's for food only. We're not taking into account education costs, transportation costs, and other very basic things that people do need to live. So how do you expect people to survive? How do we begin to justify that people should live on such a salary? And this is before we even go into work conditions.
Yeah, we've seen some years ago there was the fight from 60 rand a day up to 150 rand a day. Even today, 150 rand a day would still be a stretch for people just to feed their families. But have you had any response from the Robertson Winery at all, or from the, let's call it the wining fraternity?
No, not quite. I did hear, they were on an interview on another radio station, and Robertson Winery made mention of the fact that they are saddened to hear, that they give slavery wages, reference to slavery wages. And I think it was just such a long shot. The fact that they want sympathy when actually, just for any basic person walking into a grocery shop, you can comprehend just how grossly underpaid workers are.
Now, Denmark's biggest supermarket chain, Koketso, they've pulled off the Robertson brand completely from their shelves. Is your expectation that South African supermarket chains should follow this example and follow suit, or don't we have that same sentiments in South Africa towards workers and their families?
I think, yeah, there hasn't been for a long time. I mean, if anything has shown us this, it is the instance of Marikana, right?
Yeah.
And this is why we need to tackle the entire supply chain. The entire supply chain means that when you promote these products or allow them to still be sold in your shops, you are tacitly endorsing slavery wages. You are saying that it's okay, and it makes you part of the problem, which is something we need to talk about, because it's not just about, you know, one corporate or one company that is doing wrong. There's an entire supply chain that's going on there.
In conclusion, to wrap it up all up, what according to your organization, what should be the way forward? What should happen next? What's the plan to come to terms with this and deal with it?
I think, indeed, you know, the workers' pleas for public support should be listened to. All of us should be boycotting Robertson Wines. All of us should be going out into bottle stores and explaining to people purchasing what is going on. We should also be writing to the supermarkets that are still stocking them. And everywhere where they are given a platform, we should be saying that you cannot be doing this. You are part of a supply chain that is rotten to the core and deeply exploitative.
This fallout comes after Tom Heinemann, the director of the film Bitter Grapes, and he's a journalist as well. He visited some wine farms in South Africa, and this is what he found. And now they're calling for a boycott of Robertson's wine. What are you saying on the matter? Let's find out what you have to say on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. This one from SK says, if those farmers are smart, they should make these people shareholders on the farm. Now, that's a great idea, McBay at SABC Newsroom. Chair Castro says, at Julius Malema, Musimamani, remember they represent and fight for the poor. Hashtag bitter grapes. Oh, in fact, he's asking where's Julius Malema and Musimamani. Bitter grapes. Jehaim says, I do believe in Hex River Valley, Boere treat the black and coloreds like slaves. I can name and shame them easily, says Jermaine. Well, if you do know them, put them up. Says where Zuma says, this is no different to the monopolistic companies out there. Exploitation is a reality in our country. Hashtag bitter grapes. It's definitely a reality in terms of what people are earning on these farms. This one from Kobani says the government can't even investigate the internal affairs. How can they then investigate externally? These are some of the comments coming through. You can keep them coming right here on the Twitter handle with regards to hashtag bitter grapes. Is it a bitter pill to swallow, or is it a bitter drink in your wine? I would like to find out from you. Let us know. Is it not so sweet as it should be when you drink your favorite red wine? So, 20 years into our democracy, South Africa still faces many serious economic and developmental challenges. Many wine brands have adopted a proactive program of continuous improvement in the employment and living conditions of farm workers over the last 5 years, and they will continue to create better working environments going forward, we believe. Now, for more on transformation in the area, we spoke to Barry Stemmet, the CEO of the South African Wine Industry Trust in Cape Town.
I think the person that did the documentary did not consult with us. And also we were not informed about this documentary. So we find it difficult to make any comments on it. We do not know what the purpose or the objective of making this documentary was. So it would be difficult for us needed to say that we are not denying or confirming what has been said in the documentary. There are serious challenges within the wine industry, and it's for all of us within South Africa to confront those challenges with the necessary honesty and frankness that it deserves.
I like what you talk about, the frankness. That's why I want to ask you quite frankly. Do you believe that the wine farmers in South Africa, in this particular case, the Robertson wine farm, do you believe that they are treating the workers in a humane fashion?
Look, we cannot, because we have not been part of this documentary, we cannot comment on the conditions.
Barry,
yes.
We're not going anywhere, my friend. I want to ask you, talk about the conditions of workers on wine farms in South Africa. We've been talking about this for 25 years and nothing is changing. Please help me. Help me to help you here.
No, look, the conditions of workers and the challenges of workers on wine farms, definitely there are huge challenges. And the role players within South Africa need to confront that challenges with frankness. We know that the wine industry was the gateway for colonialism, and it was also the gateway for slavery. So we are quite aware that also the DOP system, which was a legal form of payment for work being done, has done tremendous socio-economic challenges. And we believe that the true history of the wine industry must first be established before we can move forward. So we are not denying that there are serious challenges and there are also superficial methods that are dealing with these challenges. And we say that is not the way for us to go forward. We need to confront these, but we are not in agreement that people from abroad must come and make documentaries, not consult with the internal stakeholders and role players, and we don't know what it is about, and for us blanketly just say that we support that. We can't do that. We are not denying.
But these people aren't coming from overseas and telling lies. They're coming in from overseas and they're showing us a picture of what is happening on our farms and what's happening in South Africa. The scary thing for me is I spoke to the unions a little bit earlier, and the unions are telling me, you know what's happened now? They're paying farm workers more, but the wine farmers are now demanding money for transport, money for rent, and the like. And in some cases, the workers are even worse off now than they were before.
I'm not saying that the documentary is lying. All that I'm saying is that we don't understand its purpose and its objective and the way that it has been distributed across the world. Those are what we are questioning. But we have been, right in 2012, we have been at the forefront with government and the industry in saying to them that these are the things that are happening, although that we have been advocating an increase in the living wage, an increase in the minimum wage, that has been eradicated by new conditions that have been pushed to workers, and that obviously are the conditions of transportation, housing, and all sorts of other things. We can't look at the wine industry and the workers in the wine industry as we are looking at the traditional workplaces. It is much more complex, and therefore we are saying role players, government needs to come to the party, and all spheres of government. The industry must come to the party. The unions obviously are always there, and we as civil society are also always there to advocate that we need to confront these challenges head on. We can't deny that there are these problems and challenges that exist. So we need to confront it head on. That is what we are saying.
Well, how do we...
There's a round table.
How do we do this, Barry? Because, you know, we only seem to want to come together after there's bad press, like this documentary. Surely we should be working together a little bit better with chutzpah, with a good heart, to try and fix these problems that are legacy problems for now hundreds of years on the wine farms in South Africa, not just 20 years since democracy.
No, even there is currently a round table where government, the industry, civil society, and trade unions are gathering. They have been gathering the last couple of months, and each one has placed their positions firmly on the table. It is now, especially for the industry and for government, who are the major role players, to be honest in identifying and confirming that these challenges exist and in putting measures to address these challenges. We are currently busy with learnerships. We have identified 650 learnerships that we will be rolling out in the next 18 months and facilitating that. Yeah. These are part of our own initiatives and efforts. But like you are saying, the more we are going to deal with this in the spinning a different story, in just doing it for the media, we are not going to deal with it effectively. And that is not where we want to play. We want to play in seeing that there are tangible changes taking place. And we hope that, I mean, we know and we can confirm that the wine industry and the role players haven't done enough in dealing with the aftermath of the DOP system. I mean, it's superficial changes that has been done. And it's now for the role players to seriously address it. And we're not coming to the party because of this documentary. We have been sitting for years discussing these matters.
A fascinating discussion, isn't it? There's a question on the table. The question that we're posing you today is, do you believe the story of slavery on South African wine farms? Is that still a reality today as we speak? Let us know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, and we'll take your comments in a short while. But right now, the man of the moment standing by with your sports news is Kendall Makamate.
Elvis, thank you very much. Man of the moment, I don't think I am. That title belongs to Kagiso Rabada. In fact, one of the most amazing fightbacks was staged by the Protes against the host Australia at the WACA in Perth. Reeling after day one, the men led by Faf du Plessis clawed their way back into test to eventually dominate with bat and with ball. The much maligned JP Duminy led the charge, stabilizing the South African innings with a 141-run stand in their second innings. Now, here's some comments that you've been sharing with the rest of the world about what you think the two main protagonists of that fight back had to do with what. Let's take some comments from you and to see what you've got to say about Bavuma as well as Kagiso Rabada. The first one is from Anurag Chaudhry. Kagiso Rabada is an absolutely fantastic bowler. It's going to be a summer of nightmares for the Aussies. You know what? I think they've been dreading it, and that's why they started firing at him even before they landed back in Australia. Nchanyana, Kagiso Rabada, black boy fly. You are too dope, sir. Congrats, Proteas. You made South Africa proud, and hashtag salute. Ketewena. Temba Bavuma, congrats on his first test wicket, and who would have thought to see this one? Yes, I'm sure you're talking about that amazing run out. Kugumaiki, so at Temba Bavuma and Kagiso Rabada 25 are on fire. Make us proud, boys. South Africa versus Australia at SA Cricket and Cape Town Princess. I think even the Aussie cricket supporters and now South African fans. Well done, Protea Cricket SA. Keep shining. JP Duminy, Protea Far, and all the rest. And I'll tell you what, that's where we're going to leave it with the sports. At least you got an idea what people have got to say about that amazing performance by the Proteas. As you can see behind me, pictures coming out from the court, the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court, where Mqebo Dlamini, leader of the Fees Must Fall movement, is applying for bail.
You remain on bail, okay? Okay, you're excused. Yes, Mr. Dali.
As God pleases, my lord. My lord, if I may, just start by quoting to your lordship a very useful passage, which your lordship will find at 9-32A of Dutoy's commentary on criminal procedure.
Okay.
It is a case where the learned authors deal with what the question of exceptional circumstances are. And it starts by quoting a case of S versus Skitekat. S versus Skitekat is SCHIETEKAT, 1999-1, SACR 100C, a judgment of acting Judge Slomovitz.
Yeah.
He says, my lord, I'll paraphrase the first part. He basically says that, look, it's the duty of the courts to protect the community and so on, as we all know, is a consideration in these bail issues. And then he says, which is very, very poignant in these kinds of circumstances, despite this, in other words, despite the duty of the court to protect society, courts have a greater obligation to society at large. They must jealously guard the rule of law. That is the lesson of this century. A court of law must not permit the body politic to give legislative credibility, for whatever reason, to uninformed or ignorant public outcry, or to what the government of the day perceives will best assuage those feelings of the general public which, if quelled, are calculated to do no more than to ensure that it be returned to elected office, whether it deserves to be or not. Now, what the learned judge is saying, my lord, is that despite the obvious duties to protect society, a court must be very circumspect that it is not being used as a tool in some elaborate political game. And I would like, my lord, to refer to what the learned author Cowling says about the same subject. If your lordship will just bear with me. Yes. This you'll find your lordship at 9-23. And again, it's in the context of the discussion of section 60, bracket 4. And it's very interesting that section 60, bracket 4 is always discussed in this cautionary mode of saying it should never be allowed to be used for political purposes. Cowling, in writing in 1996 SACJ, page 50 at 56, quoted here, submits that subsection 60, bracket 4, bracket A, must be narrowly interpreted, lest it would take on the connotations of the, quote, interests of state security, unquote, which was the foundation for security legislation of the former regime. The same warnings that have been warned, that have been sounded here. But, my lord, subject to what my learned colleague is going to say about our submission, that this is nothing but a political smokescreen, let me preempt him by reading for your lordship what hopefully he will read to his bosses about what to do and what not to do if you are a prosecutor. My lord, the case I'm going to cite is S versus Yengeni, 2006-1, SACR 405T. a judgment of their lordships, Mr. Justice Prela and Bertelsmann. And I hope that all the people who implicated in this behavior that we spoke about earlier will be listening. At paragraph 52, the learned judges say the following: the untrammeled exercise of their powers in a spirit of professional independence is vital to the functioning of the legal system. The independence of the judiciary is directly related to and depends upon the independence of the legal professions and of the National Director of Public Prosecutions. Undermining this freedom from outside influence would lead to the entire legal process, including the functioning of the judiciary, being held hostage to those interests that might be threatened by a fearless, committed, and independent search for the truth. Section 22(4) of the Act obliges the National Director of Public Prosecutions to bring the provisions of the United Nations guidelines on the role of public prosecutors to the attention of every prosecutor and director of the authority, and to promote respect for and compliance with these principles. And I'll jump to paragraph 55. And this was now in the specific, if I may preface this, my Lord. Here, there was the criticism that the court was giving was a meeting between the then National Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Nguka, and the minister regarding a politically sensitive case of Mr. Yengen. And the learned judge says, when the meeting between the appellant, Mr. Nguka, and the former minister is viewed in the light of these principles and guidelines, it is clear that it was unwise for all three participants to engage in it. It was unwise for the appellant to seek the aid of the minister, because the mere fact of doing so might create the impression that he was seeking the support of a politically powerful ally to influence the exercise of the National Director's discretion in his favor on grounds that had more to do with political connectivity than with the merits of the case. By the same token, it was unwise for the minister to participate in these discussions at all, precisely because it might create the perception that he was exercising improper political pressure on the National Director in taking a decision that was in his exclusive discretion, or perhaps more properly in that of the prosecutor concerned. And lastly, it was indubitably ill-advised of the former National Director of Public Prosecutions to be seen to participate in a discussion with the minister and the appellant. The independence of the office that he held, and the fearless and unfettered exercise of the extensive powers that this office confers are incompatible with any hint or suggestion that he might have lent an ear to politicians who might wish to advance the best interest of a crony rather than the search for the truth and the proper functioning of the criminal and penal processes. So we have exactly the same situation, my Lord, here, almost prophetically postulated by the appellant, Mr. Dlamini, that what is happening here is a situation that is clearly meant to take him out of society permanently, as the apartheid apparatchiks used to say. And what is important, my Lord, is the fact that this version is the version of the National Public Prosecutor, which he repeated in Parliament, and the version of the minister, that this meeting was about the situation in the universities. And hardly 4 or 5 days thereafter, the leaders of the Fees Must Fall movement are rounded up, and Mr. Ngabo Dlamini is detained, where he is still sitting in a cell as we speak. Now, moving on, my Lord, to the issue the standard. There is a passage which I would like to bring to the attention of your Lordship in the Dlamini case, paragraph 53, which emphasizes the standard that my learned friend is going to, the hurdle that he is going to have to jump to convince your Lordship that the factors are present. It is contained, my Lord, in paragraph 53 of S versus Dlamini. And it deals with the issue that I raised of the distinction between the so-called trial factors and non-trial factors.
Right.
His Lordship, Mr. Justice Klichla, says, the broad policy considerations contemplated in the, quote, interest of justice test in that context can legitimately include the risk that the detainee will endanger a particular individual or the public at large. Less obviously, but nonetheless constitutionally acceptably, a risk that the detainee will commit a fairly serious offense can be taken into account. The important proviso throughout is that there has to be a likelihood, that is, a probability that such a risk will materialize. A possibility or suspicion will not suffice. At the same time, a finding that there is indeed such a likelihood is no more than a factor to be weighed with all others in deciding what the interests of justice are. That is not constitutionally offensive, nor does it resemble detention without trial, the reprehensible institution really targeted when one speaks of preventive detention. Absent a proper basis for the original test, it will be set aside. But if there was a proper cause, one cannot justify release solely on the absence of trial-related grounds. So, my Lord, that speaks for itself. That a mere possibility, you can't simply say, oh, well, somebody who looks like you was spotted throwing a rock, and therefore you must rot in jail. You need to have something concrete, something specific, and something that has been proven. The next proposition, my Lord, that I'll jump that point, my Lord, and go to the next one. If I can take your Lordship to page 47A, more specifically to 47C. The Lordship will see that those are the additional reasons given by the magistrate for his decision. Well, he makes a point about constitutional limitations, which if it's raised, I'll leave it to one of my learned juniors to discuss. I can't. And then, my Lord, at page 47C, this is important for your Lordship to flag. The second last paragraph. The applicant was not regarded as a flight risk by the court as submitted in the notice of appeal. Now, that's very significant, my Lord, in the context of the distinctions that we have been making. Remember, if the magistrate regarded the appellant as a flight risk, then we would be in the area of so-called trial-related harm or dangers or fears. Yeah. So he, in his own words, rules out any trial-related questions of him being a flight risk. So we're merely dealing here with these so-called suspicions of what might happen in the future, which, with the greatest respect, we have demonstrated, hopefully, were completely baseless. Then, my Lord, your Lordship ultimately, in terms of section 65.4, the test at this stage, which is at the appeal stage, is whether the magistrate was wrong or not.
Clearly wrong.
Clearly wrong, my lord. And it is stated in section 65.4 very succinctly as follows. The court or judge hearing the appeal shall not set aside the decision against which the appeal is brought unless such court or judge is satisfied that the decision was wrong, in which event the court or judge shall give the decision which, in its or his opinion, the lower court should have given. So that's what we're here about. And with the greatest respect, my lord, I can't even count the ways in which the magistrate was clearly wrong that we have already dealt with. But just in case that's not enough, let's just look at one or two before I round up, my lord. If your lordship goes to, and these are patent misdirections with the greatest respect, which I will just use as illustrations. If your lordship goes to page 81 of bundle B. This is where the magistrate, quite frankly,